And I've never seen the escalation clause. This is the first time hearing of it.
And they're like, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like, you've been doing this wrong for 30 years? Your agent says you're on record and hands you the key. You can go buy yourself the Bentley. You can buy yourself whatever you want. Until then, don't even put things on your credit card. For the love of God, agents need to go through and they need to explain to their clients what the buyers are asking for. Go a little over, go to 520, go to 530. Not because you're going to spend the money, but because there's a chance that you can write a lower offer and get it down into your price point.
Hi, and welcome to the Key Concepts podcast. Today we have episode 15, and today we have our special guest, Abel Simonyan. He is a broker in the real estate industry. So Abel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate you having me on here.
I want to start with the basics. A lot of people are probably first-time home buyers. COVID set everything back. So what's the difference from a realtor or an agent and a brokerage?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Corey. So a broker is basically, you have to have at least 2 years of experience in real estate, and you have to have a certain amount of transactions that you do. You have to go back in and retake a test to get your broker's license. Technically, what that does is allows me to, if I wanted to, I can venture out. I can start my own brokerage. I can actually, with the broker's license on the real estate side through the DRE. If I was to get my NMLS, I can even open up a lending company. So loan office, basically, right? I can start doing lending for clients and people that come in. So it really gives you the ability to be your own boss. You can't just get your real estate license and just venture out and do your own thing. You have to be under a brokerage, and you have to work under a broker. A lot of times when people are newer, they don't just work under a brokerage, but they work under a team. I work with a company right now that has some pretty cool perks. The difficult thing with real estate is you get your license, and you have to figure out your own retirement plan, right? Nobody's putting money away for your 401k. And so what's really nice with some of these online brokerages that are coming out is they really give you some additional funding so that you could put away towards your retirement in your future. But I do have a team. I have a couple agents on my team, and I coach and train them. When they get a client, I basically walk people through whether they're brand new agents, they've never done a transaction before, or I do have some seasoned agents that come to me, and I'll do, they might not be on my team, but I can coach them. I'll coach them through how to negotiate, how to write contracts correctly, how to market, how to do all that stuff. So it's kind of both new and some seasoned agents.
And as a broker, you can still be a realtor as well, right? You could be an agent and represent clients.
I can, yeah. So kind of same license, yeah. So I can go out and that's what I do. I mean, that's I'm an active broker, so I do listings. I have a couple of listings. I have buyers that I work with, and that really kind of keeps my me in the game. When I have agents, especially with all the crazy California laws that have come out, it really gives me the opportunity to be an active agent. Because if I'm kind of out of it and somebody calls me and says, "Hey, what's going on with this? How do I navigate this new law?" I just navigated it myself, and so I can actually help them a lot easier.
Yeah, that's great. And how long have you been in the industry?
Oh gosh, I'm only 20 years old. It's really light.
You look like it too.
I appreciate that.
Like those baby cheeks you got there.
Yeah. Real estate's pretty hard on you. No, I've been in the industry for almost 10 years. So I've been a broker for about 6, and I spent the first 3-4 years as just an agent, basically working under someone.
What made you want to get into it?
That's a really good question. One of the things that I love doing is I love visiting open houses. I love going out and looking at homes. And I always looked at agents that go out, right? They'd like have their little lockbox code, right? They can go in and unlock any home and tour it. And I really just love that. And one of the reasons also that I enjoy real estate, I get bored very easy. One of the things that I've loved about real estate that I enjoy, and one of the reasons why I got into it too, is the constant challenges, right? No escrow is the same. No 2 escrows are the same. It's, every escrow that you have is going to be completely different issues, different things that have to come up, different things that you have to navigate through. And, really one of the things that I always tell all of my clients is I never got into real estate because of the money. I got into it because of the relationships. And I kid you not, Corey, there's probably not a single, over 10 years and over 300-400 transactions, there's not a single area in the Sacramento region that you can drop me off that I don't have friends. I can stop by, I can have tea, I can get some water, maybe get a ride. And what's kind of cool too is I have a California license. And so I've done transactions all the way down to Ventura County. I've done transactions in San Pablo. I've had listings and buyers out there. And so, I kind of let the wind take me where they will. Santa Rosa, I have clients that'll call me up and they're like, man, I don't really want to use another agent. Would you drive out here? I'm like, all right, put a full tank of gas, $300 worth of full tank of gas in my Prius, and I drive out there.
I gotta love those Priuses and the gas mileage.
Yeah.
So you said you're a broker now, but you did it early on as a realtor. So what made you make the jump from just being an agent to having a broker license?
I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, right? and I can't sit still, right? And there's actually a part of me that wants to venture out and actually have my own brokerage. In fact, I trademarked the phrase "every home saves a life." And the game plan is at some point when the good Lord wills, I want to have a brokerage that gives back, especially to sex trafficking and families that are in poverty. And that's one of the reasons why I trademarked that is because I really want this to be centered around not just, how do we make a bunch of money? How do we all just grow financially wealthy, which is important for people to take care of their families and to pay their bills, especially in California. But also having a why behind everything that we do, right? And having that why of wanting to work and really being a company and a brokerage that dedicates their, resources well and their shrewd servants, right? And we can give to the less fortunate is kind of the desire and the plan. So not sure when the Lord plans for that to happen, but at some point, that'll happen. So I actually have Mission One Realty Group is the name. Haven't launched it or anything yet, but I'm working quietly and slowly in the background to see. But I got a lot on my plate right now.
Yeah, no, that's very inspirational. Definitely have a big vision there to give back to the community in more ways than one. So backtracking a little bit now, what does it take to get into real estate? What are the licenses and certs that you need to get in?
It's kind of interesting because real estate is one of those industries where there's kind of three phases that you have to go through. The first is you have to get the classes done. Then you have to, there's typically 3 classes that you have to get done. You can do those at a college. You can go to Sac State or not Sac State, like Sacramento Community College. You can do it at Folsom Lake. You can do them online. And then you have to study for the test. Now, here's the interesting thing is the studying that you do doesn't prepare you at all for the test that you have to take.
Of course.
And, yeah.
Of course.
And I learned this the hard way because I was like, all right, I got my license. Okay. And then I'm like, I have nothing. I have no idea what I'm doing. And then even those 2 phases together, getting through the 3 courses and getting the certificates and getting your license, the real world has nothing to do with any of the materials that you've read, right? So you might know about encumbrances or you might know about liens and things like that, but you get into real estate and writing the contract and how do you negotiate? How do you have conversations? Where do you start people? How do you protect people's money when they get into escrow, for a buyer? What's the right way to market and give your sellers the best opportunity to sell? None of that stuff is taught. And so, a lot of people don't even go that route. Won't even go that route to actually pay the money because everybody gets into real estate because they're like, all right, I'm going to make some money. Mm-hmm. They don't want to give up a part of their commission in the first, 10 transactions that they do so they can learn it correctly. And so they just, I've had conversations with people where I'm like, hey, this contract isn't written well. Right. And they're like, I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm like, you've been doing this wrong for 30 years? Like, I'm so sorry. Right? I'm like, that's not really how it works. Like, let's do a Zoom and I can walk you through the contract and show you that that's not really what you think this contract is doing isn't really what it's doing. And it's a lot of times people aren't like the continued education, keeping up with things, really knowing how to write them correctly isn't something that they do. So it's not a lot. It'll probably cost you $500 for the online courses. A couple $100 after that to take the test because you have to do a background check. So it'll cost you probably about $1,000 to get into it. And then of course the MLS or the associations, you pay them a lot of money to be called a realtor. I don't know if you know this, but you can't refer to yourself as a realtor unless you're actually a part of an association and you pay for that. And so if you don't pay for that, then you're not a realtor, you're just a real estate agent. So you can't market yourself in that way. But that also, the associations that you sign up for give you access to your lockboxes so you can actually open up homes. It gives you access to the MLS. It gives you access to the car forms, which are the California Association of Realtors. And that's where you get your purchase agreements, you get all your contracts, and that's where you do the bulk of the heavy work.
And that's crazy. There's nickel and dime every chance they get. And then
yeah.
there's a whole another process of getting assigned with the association and getting the right documents in order. But that actually leads me to my next question is, what kind of questions can people ask to make sure that they are getting connected with the right realtor or agent or broker? Because it can be a little bit challenging. If someone that's new in the market that doesn't know what to look for or how to filter out the good from the bad, how could they do that?
So statistically, Corey, 80% of real estate agents do 1 to 2 transactions a year, right? So if you're on the buying side, one of the things that you have to look at is, one, they don't have do they have the experience? How many transactions have they done? The other thing is, when you get into real estate, they'll tell you that your first 4 years, you're only primarily working with buyers, right? At that 4-year mark, some of the people that you've helped buy homes kind of switch now, and they start turning around and selling. And if you've been in contact with them, you'll start getting listings where you're not soliciting them, but people that you've done transactions with call you up and say, hey, I had a great experience, buying with you. I want to sell it. The hard part with that is if you have an agent that's never represented a seller, they have no idea what a seller is going to be expecting, what's actually going to make sense to a seller, right? And so interview a couple of agents. Sit down with a couple of agents, have conversations with them, look at their stats, look at their reviews, right? See what they have going on. You can actually, on Zillow and some of these syndications, they actually pull the amount of transactions that the person has done. So they can just tell you verbally, I've done 30 transactions this year. But really, when you look at it, it's 3, right? And they're brand new. In fact, I actually had a client, a really good friend of mine, his mother-in-law was selling a house in San Pablo, the one that I did for them. And they just sent me the contract to look at. And this gal was charging him $7,000 to get a sewer lateral fixed, because in the Bay Area, that has to get fixed. You can't just get inspections on it. You have to fix it. And she wanted $7,000 for her to do that. And then she wanted to charge him 7% to do the transaction, but she was keeping 4 for herself and 4 or 5 for herself, and only giving 2 or 3 to the other agent. Well, I called the company and got an inspection. It was $1,200 for the sewer lateral inspection. So they're like, yeah, I don't know. And she was a new agent, right? The other thing that I would recommend is a good buyer's agent is going to walk you through the process. They're not in a hurry to get you out and looking at homes and try to make a commission. They really like you. A sign of a good agent is one that says, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's get together. I want to walk you through the transaction. I want to walk you through the process so that you guys are comfortable. Because a lot of times, the first time you have a conversation with a client, it's a 50,000 foot view of it. And then as you get closer and you get into contract, it starts getting closer and closer, right? And it makes more sense to them. So a good agent will sit you down and they'll tell you they're not going to be rushed. If you have an agent that's an order taker, that's just going to be okay, you want to write $500,000 on this $1 million house? Okay, let me just write that down. It's probably not a good plan, right? They're just going to get you frustrated and they're going to show you 1 million homes. And but if you have an agent, a good agent will actually sit you down and say, let's go through the process. Because the thing, of course, is that you have a earnest money deposit that gets put down. It's typically 1% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a house for $700,000, it's $7,000. And there's 3 different contingencies, 3 main contingencies that help protect the buyer so they can get that money back. If the agent isn't explaining those things to you before you get into escrow, it's probably time to interview a new agent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, $7,000 is not a little bit of money, it's quite a bit of money. So if you lose that because of an agent that's inexperienced or doesn't know what they're doing, I think that's something that would probably haunt me, to be honest. I think I can't let that go. I'll be frustrated forever.
Yeah.
So then let's say I do find an agent that I like, I interview them and I want to sign up with them. Are there any contracts and stuff that people have to sign, whether you're a seller or a buyer? You can't just say, hey, let's on good faith be my realtor.
Right. No,
can't do that.
Not anymore. So that was never the case on the listing side, but now it's actually changed quite a bit on the buyer side as well. And quick story, real quick, backtrack to the story of having an agent that doesn't know what they're doing. I had a agent that wrote an offer on one of my listings, and she removed all the contingencies. And then she text messages me 3 days later and says, the boyfriend said he doesn't want the girlfriend to buy the house anymore. Well, if the contingencies were in place, they could have used the contingencies, because just changing your mind that's not good faith. The contract is written all in good faith. And so I relayed the information to my seller and she said, great, I'm going to keep the deposit. And so
cha-ching,
that's
what I see.
So the agent calls me up and she's like, hey, I sent you the cancellation. And I'm like, hey, appreciate the cancellation. We're not signing off on, we'll sign to cancel the escrow, but you're not getting the money to buy back. So long story short, it's been about 3 years because escrow can't release the funds even to the buyer or to the seller unless they mutually agree. And so it's been like 3 years and that money is still in escrow.
Wow.
And last I had one of my escrow officers reach out to the buyer's agent and she said, the seller won't talk to me anymore.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that makes sense why you just screwed him out of like, I think it was like $6,000 or $6,500.
That's because they dropped the contingencies.
Right. Right. And not only that, but like you drop the contingencies, there's a way to have a conversation with an agent, right? Like, I mean, you got to get creative at that point, right? If your client's not wanting to purchase or to finalize the purchase, there's a way that you can have a conversation with them and just, have a conversation with an agent and just say, hey, you know what, this is what's going on. We'd like to, like we know we're in escrow and stuff like that. We'd like to cancel. Most sellers are going to be, understanding of things like that. But when you send an text message saying the boyfriend doesn't want her to purchase it, well, he's not party to the contract. So, okay, great. He can tell her whatever he wants. We're keeping the deposit. Sorry, back to your question about contracts. So there's 3 main contracts that govern real estate transactions. The first one is the RLA, which is the real estate listing agreement. Residential listing agreement. And like I had a listing appointment this morning in El Dorado Hills, and really, you as an agent shouldn't start acting as an agent on behalf of somebody unless you have that signed. And what's great with that is you don't have to go on the market right away. It does allow you, it gives you a provision to say, hey, we're going to sign right now. Let's say we got a bunch of things to do. We're going to put this actually on the market in like a month from now or 2 months from now, right? But with them signing that, one, it gives you the opportunity and the ability to actually now legally act on their behalf. And secondly, that gives you an opportunity to actually pre-open escrow, especially with homes that have HOAs. You want to get the escrow opened a little bit sooner because HOA docs take forever to get. And then you have preliminary title reports and stuff that need to come out. And then on the buyer side, there's a lot of wonderful changes that happen in actually all over the US. And so now as agents, we can't just get up and run to open a house for somebody and let them tour a property. We actually have to have an agreement. We have to have a buyer broker agreement put into place that says that you are not only agreeing to use me as an agent, but there's a section for compensation that a buyer and a broker need to agree on that says if we're going to, if you do like the house that we're going to write that we're going to look at, if we end up writing an offer on it, if the seller decides not to pay my commission, you're going to be, holding the bag, right? You're going to have to pay me my commission. And the third contract, the third main contract that governs everything is the purchase agreement, which is where the buyer and seller basically negotiate and they come into agreement with things. That escrow is a neutral company, so they won't do anything unless both people agree to it, right? And so sometimes, especially when I got into real estate, people would be like, oh, you know what? They'd see I was a new agent. You know what? I'm going to have the buyer do X, Y, and Z. And I'd freak out and I call my broker and I'm like, oh, they're threatening to do this. And he's like, well, just because they sent you a paper that says that that's what they want to do, unless this buyer, your client actually signs off on it, it doesn't mean anything. And I was like, oh, okay. But those are the 3 main contracts that govern a real estate transaction.
So let's say I found the realtor and I thought I interviewed him well. We're now looking at homes, but they never signed that buyer, broker, or agent agreement. So that's obviously a red flag. But then what are the consequences of not signing that agreement? The
legal aspect of that is there are fines that an agent will incur. Corey, the way that I see it too is if somebody's bypassing some of these things that need to happen, what's going to happen in escrow? What happens when you're in contract and they're negotiating, even if it's a $200,000 condo, if it's a $500,000 condo, if it's $1 million house, right? Do you really want somebody that is, looking at contracts lightly and just say, whatever, right? We'll figure that out. The other thing too is you have to be careful with is if they don't have you sign that, they might put it together afterwards. And that contract actually indicates what percentage they're going to get paid. And so, you get into escrow and all of a sudden they sign you at 3%. They send it over to you at 3%. The seller's only paying 2.5%. Guess who's going to have to pay the other 0.5%?
Yep, you are. Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, is there any way of doing it on your own then, whether you're selling a home or buying a home, instead of getting an agent or realtor? Is that ever a thing, or is that a bad idea?
Obviously, as a real estate broker, I'm going to say that's a bad idea, right? But in reality, Corey, if you look at the disclosure packages and stuff like that, the brokerage isn't there just to make money, right? You have a layer of protection that you have when you have real estate broker, or licensed broker or agent that you're working with, right? If you look at the legal documentation that comes out of a transaction with a real estate broker that's involved, compared to like if you just did it on your cell, like FSBO, for sale by owners. The stack is like, the difference is massive, right? It's like 2 more inches of papers that you actually sign. Now, I haven't dabbled really a whole lot into it, but there are now brokerages that are basically listing only. And what they do is if you pay them like $3,000, they'll send you a sign, they'll send you a lockbox. You take pictures and they'll put it on MLS, and then in the MLS it'll say just contact the owner, right? Now you can definitely do it. You could do a FSBO, and there's a website, and I think it's like a very small percentage, like 1 or 2% of homes that sell actually are done through FSBO. Or you could do these new services where they just put it on MLS and you take all the phone calls and you have to negotiate things, and then you could get like a real estate attorney, so you don't have to do that. But one of the things that I've done a lot is if I have a person that wants to sell their house and they have a buyer, I'll just charge them like 1%, just so the brokerage can make money, because ultimately we're still taking on liability, so they're not going to let me do it for free. But I'll charge like 1% or 2% and do both sides, package it all together. That way all the disclosures are done, all the inspections are done, all the contingencies are covered, and then everybody's happy and they know that, this went through a legitimate process. So
that's when you're representing both the buyer and the seller?
Yeah.
Is that ever become a problem for you? I mean, you're kind of representing your fiduciary responsibilities, usually whoever you're talking to first. How do you balance out the seller's needs and now the buyer's needs?
Right. I think in a transaction like that is where your ethics become tested more than anything else. And I will say, of course, so in the state of California, it is legal for people for us to do dual representation, right? And I do it all the time. The issue isn't with the dual representation. I think the main core issue lies in the driving force behind people that only use listing agents, right? I've had people that come to me and they say, well, I only use listing agents. And the thought process behind that is that, well, I'm going to get some kind of an advantage here, right? I'm going to get insider trading, right? And I'm going to beat everybody else out. Right. So that's people's mentality and thought process of why they specifically go searching for a listing agent and will only use the listing agent. Now, here's the problem with that. If I'm the listing agent and you're expecting me to divulge information to you that nobody else knows, you have an unethical advantage over all the other buyers, right? Secondly, I'm kind of screwing my seller over, because not only am I breaking my fiduciary duty to them, I'm lying to them. I'm divulging information just to my client, not to other people. And really, if everybody else knew the information that I was providing my clients, they could have actually maybe increased their price. And so the seller could have possibly made more money, right? So I'm screwing them all out of that. And I'm not walking in ethics, right? Ethically through this process. Now, that tells me 2 things, right? Well, the first thing, it tells me something, and then it begets a question, right? The first thing that tells me is that agent that says, yeah, I'll do that for you, is not committed to the buyer or the seller. They're committed to themselves and their commission, right? Earlier, we talked about how 80% of agents do 1 or 2 transactions. So if they can double end, is what we call it in the industry. If they can double end it, then they just made more money than they would have otherwise, right? But the question that begets is, if you have an agent who is just clearly indicated that they're willing to screw the seller over, to work unethically, lie to them, cost them money, and break their fiduciary duty to help you buy the home, do you think they're more likely or less likely to not disclose material fact that could cause a cancellation in the process when you're buying the home, right? So it's like, hey, this guy's a hitchhiker. He just killed somebody down the street, but I'm going to put him on my car and hope that he treats me better, right? So when things like that happen, it becomes really like you have to be very careful, because if they're already indicating that they're going to be doing that, the last thing that you want to do is finish a transaction and realize, hey, there's things that, they actually didn't disclose, because for them, it's all about the dollar amount, right? They're committed to their dollar amount. Now, I'll give you a great example of this. And this kind of preludes or like goes into how I deal with it. I had a listing in Elk Grove. We were listed at like $725,000. I had this family come look at it, and they said, hey, we love the house. We want to buy it. We only work with listing agents. And I'm like, okay, I already know where this is going. I'm like, all right. She says, will you represent us? And I had an honest conversation with her. I explained everything that I just said. And I said, if you're using listing agents, they're not loyal to the sellers who they already have a contract with. You're really going to get into a contract with them knowing that they're not loyal to them. So I said, listen, if you want me to represent you because you think I'm going to give you insider information, I'm going to screw my sellers over, and for the benefit of getting a paycheck, I'm not interested in it. I don't want to do it. I'll never do it. You can go find another agent and have them write an offer. Now, on the flip side, if you want me to represent you because I'm an amazing agent and I know how to write contracts, I know my way around contracts, I know how to not be the highest priced offer, but how to finagle the terms and the conditions to get you the offer accepted, then I'll take you guys on. And sure enough, they ended up using me. And she told me, and it was kind of interesting, when somebody tells me like, I do this all the time, right? Like I buy 1 million homes a year. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, right? I just met you. I don't know that. And she had told me they've bought and sold like 20, 30 homes. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, right? Well, since that conversation, that family's purchased and sold probably 12, 13 homes for me, right? Through that process. Wow. So the way that I handled it was there was nothing from the seller side that I divulged to the buyer, and there's nothing from the buyer side that I divulged to the seller. In fact, when I wrote the offer, there wasn't any information that I divulged, and I just said, hey, listen, this is how we're going to write it. Here's the things that I would recommend to anybody, whether I knew what the seller was, had or didn't have, because I have experience with working with sellers and I know they really like this stuff, right? So we're going to sweeten up the terms and the conditions. When I presented the offers, I actually deducted all the agent's information. And so my clients didn't know which offer was from me and which one was from anybody else. And we had like 4 or 5 offers. And so, and this is just an extra step that I take.
That's a good tip. No, yeah. That's great. Because then that really does make it a clean slate.
Yeah. And that way I'm not influencing it, right? And I tell them, if you guys feel like I'm influencing one offer and I'm like, here's 4 offers, which one do you want to take? Like tell me and we'll I'll back off. But I did that. And then what I did with the buyer or the sellers is I go through the contingencies. I go through the areas where a buyer could typically come back and ask for more money, right? Or cancel or do things. I went through all of that, disclosed everything, gave them the pros and cons to each one. And then I said, which one do you guys want to pick? And they're like, well, we want this offer. And I said, okay, great. I'm going to go call my clients and let them know that they accept you guys accepted their offer. Right. But you just have to, again, I think there's a certain percentage of the population that only wants to work with sellers agents. And the idea behind it, right? The reasoning behind it is not the reasoning why you want to be using a dual agent. Like you're actually going to be screwing yourself over in the long run, and it's actually not going to put you in a good position.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if they're just looking for a paycheck and then you're not getting disclosed the information that might cancel or back out of that offer, then you buy that home. Now you're stuck with repairs or other expenses or things that you just didn't know, or taxes or this or that and whatever. And it's just costing you way much more than just having it negotiated the right way. So yeah, I guess roll the dice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So then that makes me wonder, are there misconceptions, like things that aren't true that people believe about realtors and brokers?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that we don't do anything and we get a lot of money. I think everybody has a tendency of starting to count people's money, right? Like, oh, this person, and for some reason it's more real estate than anything else, because they know what the percentage is. And so they're like, oh, it's an $800,000 house, so 16, so 22, 21,000, right? This is how much money you're going to make. Are you going to give me any of this money back? Right? So they really do start looking at that. And the other thing too that's really interesting to me, Corey, is when I sit down with a seller, they usually start trying to negotiate the commission, and I'm like, There's one little problem with that, right? If I tell you I'm charging 2.5%, and then you're like, well, give me a good deal and I'll go with you. I'm like, all right, I'll do it for 1.5%. If an agent is willing to just really quickly do away with his own income to be able to get a listing, do you think they're really going to negotiate on your behalf when a lower offer comes in or somebody's asking them for more things? No, because they just showed you that all they want is they want a quick turnaround. They just want to make a commission real quick. And so if they're not worried about their commission and their income, and they just want to hurry up and get this done, what are the chances, again, that age-old question, right? What are the chances that they're going to actually treat you right? They're going to take care of you, and they're going to go back to the buyers and say, hey, no, we're not doing that. Or as a buyer to go back and say, no, like I've been able to, there's lack of a better word, right? But like squeeze out more out of buyers just because I'm proactive and I'll go back and actually serve off or counter offers to buyers than not, because a lot of agents are like, well, this is the best that we could do. Just hurry up and sign here, and here, and they're done. But that extra like 2 hours can make the seller $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. And you know, I mean, I know we're in California, but you know, a lot of people probably don't make that in a year, right? Or in a month. And so even if it's a month's worth, I mean, who's going to give you just 2 hours on the Realtors and just, you know, got you an extra month's worth of income? So I think that part of, you know, we don't do anything. which isn't true. There's been, you know, for every $1 million, $2 million client that I've had that I've made $30,000, $40,000 commissions off of, I've had 10, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 clients that I've spent time going out showing them homes for months at a time, and they don't buy anything, and I don't make a commission. Right. There's a lot of driving that goes into it. There's a lot of negotiating that happens to it. There's a lot of, and 99% of my issues, I kid you not, are with other agents that are just incompetent, and I'm having to explain things to them. And I'm like, dude, like, come on, like, that's not really how it is. You have to see what you're doing wrong here. Right. And I'll tell you, you know, a little transparent moment. I mean, there's been times where I've literally gone home and I just sat down and I just broke down and I'm just crying because I'm like, this is just madness. Like there's like a million things that are going on all at the same time. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Right. Like just, you got people with personalities and things that are, you know, coming at you all over the place. And a good agent is worth the money that you're going to pay them. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I had a offer we wrote. Agent came back, the seller's agent came back and said, we got offers that are better than yours. And I was like, explain to me how they're better. Well, they have a larger down payment. And I'm like, what? But we removed the appraisal contingency. No, there's the better offer. Theirs is the better offer. So I'm going back and forth like for 10 minutes. This guy gets pissed and he's like, look, man, stop freaking calling me. Like, don't call me anymore. I said, you guys, we have better offers. I'm like, all right. He calls me back 15 minutes later. He's like, hey, man. You know, I had to kill my pride and I wanted to call you and tell you that I called my broker and you're right. You guys did have the better offer. Right. And that extra 10 minutes of me being on the phone was the difference between my clients getting the house or not. I mean, had I not done that, they would have taken another offer. They would have moved on. And this was like my client's dream home. Right. And so there's a lot that happens behind the scene that a lot of people don't realize with agents and all the negotiating, the phone calls, because I will try to smooth things out for people. I mean, ultimately, I'm not the decision maker, but I will work hard to smooth things out to a point that like when we actually finally have something to present to the buyer or the seller, I've already gone through a ton of things and conversations to even get it close to something that could be presentable. And I'm not just going to the sellers and stressing them out and saying, well, this is, you know, this is what they're doing, or to the buyers, right? This is what they're doing, but really trying to smooth things out. So there's a lot of work that happens behind the scene.
Dang, yeah, that's definitely something that I always thought about is like, do they just open doors and get paychecks? You know? So there's a lot of talking and communication and negotiating and structuring the deal, making sure the brokers know or the realtors know how to talk to their brokers and ask the right questions and make sure the right offer is being accepted. I do like that comment around if the agent is going to reduce their commission, they're likely just going to accept any offer and have it structured in a way that you may not be getting, you may be losing that extra 1% elsewhere, but you're thinking you're really saving it in commissions, but you're really not. So it's better to pay the realtors the commission fees if they're going to be doing the work and doing the work good is worth that amount, because you're going to get that probably in cost savings, or at the tail end of the deal, whether it's credits or something else, it's probably going to be it's all going to come out of the wash most likely.
Yeah. Yep.
So then if someone wants to get connected with your brokerage or you as a realtor, how can they contact you? How can they connect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I'm on social media. You can Google search my info as well. There's not a ton of Abel Simonyans out there, so especially in the Sacramento region. So if you put Abel Simonyan broker, it'll pull it up. In fact, I would invite people to jump into my Zillow profile. I got tons of reviews on there, so they can read about some of my past clients and what they say about me. They can reach out to me via either cell phone. They can call me. They can email me. They can send me a text message, messenger. So I'm pretty readily available. Although I'm trying not to be on my phone past like 8-9 o'clock.
Awesome. We'll get all of the little flares and pop-ups, and we'll also put it in the description below. So if people want to contact you, check out the Realtor profile, the Zillow profile. We'll get them connected so they could check them, especially if they're here local in Sacramento. So if you guys are here local in Sacramento, yep, you guys know who to call, Abel Simonyan. So I want to move over to the market right now. So is the market favoring buyers or sellers right now in Sacramento? I know every region is different, but how does the Sacramento market look like?
Right. Corey, I heard this analogy and I freaking think it's genius. It's the best thing I've ever heard. They said the Sacramento market is like a hot pocket in the microwave. You take it out, some parts are super cold and some parts are boiling hot. Right. And so that's kind of the Sacramento region right now. There's areas that are hot and popping. Price, of course, is a huge determinant right now. A couple of years ago, you could list a house $40,000, $50,000 overpriced and you'd still get multiple offers. It has shifted. It has slowed down. I am seeing homes stay on the market for longer. Kind of the trajectory was that they were staying on the market longer and still selling for the current list price. But now you're starting to see it stay on the market longer and actually dropping. So it's a fantastic opportunity. Rates are coming down a little bit. It's a fantastic opportunity to be able to get in. There's not a lot of competition. Historically, winter season, everything slows down. Kiddos go back to school. And so there's not a ton of people that are driving around and looking at homes. Sellers are agreeing to a lot of concessions, whether it's the agent's commission, whether it's credits back that a buyer can use towards closing costs, or like rate buy downs. There's a plethora of different things that they can do with that. The way that I see it, honestly, is this: as rates go down, it's going to go back to more buyers. It's going to flood the market with more buyers. The pendulum's going to swing back to being a seller's market. So it's way better to buy a house now, get that locked in, because it'll be easier for you to just do a refinance than it will be to try to put an offer in and have to offer more. There's a really good saying in real estate, and they say the best time to buy a house is when you can afford it, right? Because while you're waiting for the market to crash, if the market crashes and your income is impacted by it, you ain't buying nothing. You're not going to buy anything, right? Unless you're cash heavy, or right the other way around, right? You're doing well, but the inflation keeps driving it up and you don't actually have enough money to be able to, you're waiting for your dream home and you're going to end up actually paying more for it. So it's way better to just buy a house when you can afford it. Stop waiting for the market to crash. Stop waiting for things. There's that good saying, date the rate, marry the home. That's flirt with the rate a little bit, right? Rates have come down a little bit right now. Get into the house that you want. That way you're not paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 more. And kind of fun fact, I don't know if you know about this, but if you actually make one additional payment a year on your home, so let's say your payment's $3,500, you get tax returns, you get bonus or whatever, just by doing one additional payment per year on your home, you actually reduce your mortgage from 30 years down to like 24 or 25.
Wow. So that's significant.
Yeah. Yep. So if you have some extra money, you can throw it in there, because what you're doing is you're saving the principal from interest, right? So anything that you make on a monthly payment that's actually above and beyond the regular payment is going to go towards interest. And the way that mortgages are amortized is your first couple of years, you're making like 90% of your payment is going to interest, right? So only very few, like you can make a $3,000 payment and like $50 goes towards the principal, right? The rest is going towards interest. At the end of the 30 years, you're making that same, $30,000 or $3,000 payment, and most of it is going towards principal and very little is going towards the interest. And so when you actually make extra additional payments, just one extra year, you're shaving like 4 to 6 years off of your mortgage. And so if you're able to even do a little bit more, pay it off a little faster.
And especially if you refinance and you get a lower rate, then you could save that extra money and really pay that down a little bit quicker. So that totally makes sense. So do you think right now interest rates are going down? Is that kind of the sentiment right now?
Yeah. We're starting to see it slow down and shift. It's starting to come down a little bit at a time. There's going to be a meeting here, I think, on the 16th of the 17th. That I think they're going to be lowering it even a little bit more.
Where do you think it'll kind of like balance out at? Right. Are we going to see 4s again?
Yeah.
What is your prediction? I know nothing's guaranteed, but
that's
wild prediction.
Yeah, wild prediction. Human nature is that, Cora, is that when things go up, when it comes down a little bit, we start freaking out, right? Like we were paying $2 a gallon of gas, and then it went up to $9, and we're like, this is so much, and then it went down to $7, and we're like, yes, we have such cheap gas, right? Like, because it went down from 9 to 7, right?
Yeah.
The flip side of that is true as well, right? We got so used to the 2-3% in the mid the 2000s during COVID and stuff, 2020s.
21.
People got used to that. So now like the 4-5% is just like, oh my God, this is just so much, right? When I got into real estate about 9-10 years ago, we were averaging like 5 to like 5.5 to 6.5%, right? That was kind of the norm. And again, it's like, we see that dip and it's gone down. We historically know that it's gone down to like 2.5-3%. Everybody's still waiting for that to happen. Now, kind of to your point, what you said earlier is if you buy a house and the rates go down, you could just refinance it and it'll lower it significantly more. Now, one of the things that I don't recommend is in the past, we used to, when it's been a steady like 5%, for example, we used to buy down the rate when it was like permanently buying down. It's pretty expensive. It's usually about 1% for 1/4% to be dropped, right? So if you're buying a $800,000 house, you're paying $8,000 to lower the percent by 1/4. I don't recommend that right now, because what you don't want to do is spend $16,000, $17,000 or $20,000 to lower it from 6.25 to like 5 3/4, and then the rates go down to 5, and you're like, crap, I should have just waited and refinanced, right? And I just wasted $20,000. So don't do that. If you are able to get some credits from a seller, get a really good lender that can get creative in using those credits. You can do rate buy downs to where it's your first year is lower and then it goes up a little bit higher. It's not a variable. It's still a fix, but it's just the first year it goes down and then it goes up to a little bit more the second year, and the third year you're basically paying the regular fee. And then what's nice with those is a lot of times the money that you put towards that, like let's say you put 10, 12 grand towards that, you get that from the sellers and you put that towards the rate buy down. If the rates actually go down, you don't lose all that money. You can yank that out and actually pay to refinance the house down to the lower rate. So if you went from 6.25 or 6.5 down to 6, and then the rates went down to like 5.25, you could just call your mortgage company up and say, hey, well, I want to use this money. I want to refinance it down to the 5.5 or 5.25, and they'll do that for you. So
nice.
Date the rate.
Date the rate. That's right. Because that one, you could always switch it out. So then as a seller or as a buyer, now I know there's several variables, so interest rates can fluctuate, but is there a better time of the year? Like, is there a seasonality to real estate?
One of the biggest groups of people that influence purchasing is folks with kids in the school, that have kids in the school. And so typically when you look at that, and that'll be homes that are the ones that are the most influenced by that are homes that are going to be between like $500,000 and $800,000, right? Because that's kind of the sweet spot. They're priced well, and those are going to be the most influenced, right? Multi-million-dollar homes, people don't really care seasonally. They have the money. They can buy a $2 million house, $3 million house. They can move their kids. That's not a problem, right? And so those are the ones that are going to be influenced. Usually real estate is impacted by seasons. So springtime, right around springtime, as the kids are starting to, get out of school. People are getting out of hibernations because, we have horrible winters here in Sacramento, and it's just unbearable. It's just the winter cold and stuff, right? People start in the springtime, they'll start looking at homes because what they want to do is they want to move when the kids get out of school so they could be in the home before the school season starts. And so that'll run through from basically March, April. One of the things that I do tell sellers to avoid is holidays, putting homes on the market during the holidays or right before holidays. I've made that mistake where I put a house, this was years ago, of course, learned my lesson.
Of course.
Put the house on the market right before 4th of July, and I'm just like sitting there. It's like Saturday, and I'm like, where are people at? Why isn't anybody coming in? Everybody's getting ready for the 4th of July. Nobody's, traveling. They're all out of town and stuff. Nobody's coming to open houses. And so you want to avoid those. On the buy side, you have more competition during those spring and summer months. You do have less to pick from because sellers will hold off on listing the homes until spring and summer. But homes still come on the market in the wintertime. So if you don't mind having less people visiting homes with you, along with you, and having less competition, but maybe having less homes to look at, this is a really great time to do that. And in fact, actually right now, it's not going to be as impacted by that because homes are staying on the market longer. So as you get out in the winter seasons now, as we start getting close to fall, this is actually a pretty good sweet spot because you have homes that have come on during the summertime that are still on the market, and you have homes that are just currently coming on the market that are still on the market. And so you get a really good choice of homes, but you don't have all the buyers that are out there looking during the summer months.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of good in the sense where in this market, right now is probably the best time to buy because you have a lot of inventory from the buyer's perspective. On the seller's side, you may have to kind of consider, should you wait for the spring, summer when school's out? Maybe you can get a better price. Interest rates might come down. You might be able to get more competition and sell it. So, man, it's definitely a balancing act. If you're a seller or buyer, you got to figure out what your move is.
Right.
You mentioned HOA earlier. And so what is HOA for people that don't know what that is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Homeowners Association, I also call it pain in the ass. Although, there are some benefits to it for sure, right? If I drive into a neighborhood and there's like a really bright pink home, one of the homes is just painted bright pink, I'm like, there's no HOA here. Like I could tell because of that, no HOA would have allowed that house to get painted that color, right? Or if there's somebody that's outside burning tires in their yard, you're like, there's probably no HOA here, right? Nothing governing that. And so HOAs, Corey, can range very drastically. I mean, they can range from, hey, you just pay it for maintenance. So if there's any questions and stuff like that, we can take care of it. $50, $60, $70 a month or whatever, to $700-800 a month of HOA fees. And it can literally go from, you're paying for nothing to you can't park the car on the street. You can't have any cars. I mean, there's neighborhoods where you can't even have cars in the driveway. So you have to be very careful, navigating that. Like I had Gold River, for example, here in Sacramento, each one of those villages is its own HOA. And most people don't know that because they think like Gold River is just one big area. It's just like little villages. No, each one is its own HOA. And so you can have one where it's like this side of the street, you're not even allowed to have cars in the driveway at night. That side, there's a car that's broken down. It has an HOA, but there, the tire is missing or whatever, right? And it's been sitting there for months, and you can see the cobwebs and stuff on it. And so I've had people that have come in and they're like, yeah, we like this house. We're thinking about buying this house. And I'm like, hey, do you have an agent? Yeah, he told us to come see this house. And I'm like, okay, how many? Because I already tell. I'm like, how many people live in your house? Yeah, there's like 6 of us. I'm like, okay, how many cars do you have? We have like 5. And I'm like, this house isn't going to work for you. Why? Because it's a 3-car garage and you have 5 cars. Where are you going to park the rest? You're not allowed to have any of the cars on the driveway. So you're going to have to go down the street and park your cars down the street. And they're like, I didn't know that, right? So especially even if you have like RVs, people that have RVs, that's really important to look at. Make sure that they even allow it. Some neighborhoods won't allow any RVs. They'll actually throw a fit even if you park the RV in the front of the house for a couple hours while you're getting it ready and stuff. So it's really, really important to have, agents that they can look at all of that. Some of it is really nice. I mean, some that are more expensive aren't just necessarily because they want to tell you what to do, which is always a part of it. But some HOAs also cover like the roof and the paint of the house. right? Like in Gold River, again, as an example, there's that like the row of brown homes. The HOA is like $600-700, but they paint those houses that specific brown so it kind of stays uniform. And so it is more expensive, but you're getting quite a bit that goes with it as well.
So there's pros to cons to it. It sounds like most people are probably going to hate HOA, but there are edge cases where there are going to be some people that do like the HOA. So for someone who wants to have those rules or regulations or likes HOA, what would that customer look like?
If somebody's going to live in a HOA, if you're really thinking about buying in a HOA, I would recommend see if there's like a long-term Airbnb that you can find and just rent there for like 2 months or 3 months, or just at least drive into that neighborhood. I give this advice to my clients all the time, like drive into a neighborhood and just park the car and eat dinner, right? Like roll down the windows and you can tell a lot by the neighborhood by doing that, right? There's people walking, there's things that are happening. But a lot of people that want to live in HOAs are people that really want like law and order. They want to be able to say, hey, you know what, there's a lot of noise that's coming out over here. I'm going to take care of my house. I have pride of ownership. This guy's just completely, this house is a complete dump. I don't want to live in a neighborhood where my house looks really nice, but that looks like a dump. And so there's a lot of people that'll move into areas like that love and enjoy the HOA because at some level, I guess it gives them some stability of knowing that some weirdo's not going to move down the street and start, tearing his car apart in the driveway.
Yeah. So there's the use case for everybody. I guess if you're willing to pay for the HOA and you're willing to live with the regulations, then
right.
maybe it's a good fit. So then the other like expense that homeowners probably don't know about is Mello-Roos.
Mm-hmm.
And what is Mello-Roos, and does it ever go away, or are you kind of like stuck with that forever?
The Mello-Roos is basically a specialty tax. And, because the builders at some point decided that it wasn't enough for them to just make money off of the house that they're selling you. They want you to pay for the streets. They want you to pay for the lights. They want you to pay for the school that they built down the street. And so what they do is they slide in a little Mello-Roos. And those can vary. I mean, it could vary a couple $100 a month. I mean, it could be, a total of a couple $1,000. Now that's actually in addition to, it's a supplemental. So it's in addition to the regular property tax that you have. They do go away. They're typically there for 20 to 30 years. Most Mello-Roos do reserve the right to extend it past that.
Wow.
And so if they get to like the 20-year mark and they go, well, you know what, let's make a little bit more money, right? Like what's a couple more $100 out of everybody's pocket for a couple more years, right? So they might squeeze that in there and you're still getting the Mello-Roos bill for a couple more years after that. So it's typically 20, 30 years. And that is one of the things that a lot of people will look for when they find out is they're like, now let's just go to the older, well-established neighborhoods and, we'll buy a house there. And that way we don't have to worry about all this extra fees and stuff like that. They're going to nickel and dime us. We'd rather just not have that.
Yeah, makes sense. Jeez, man, 20, 30 years. And by that time, I'm probably going to move anyways, to be honest. So
right.
Good to know, though. So kind of recapping where we're at so far. We found the realtor, liked the realtor, figured out commissions. We got on a contract. We got all this figured out. We're now shopping. We're looking at houses, or the seller has something on the market. We haven't talked about how am I even getting qualified? So on the loan side, how does someone get pre-qualified? And this is for residential homes. And what are all the documents and stuff that goes into getting that pre-qualification to even like start that process of going out and venturing to looking at homes? Right.
My lender's going to kill me for having this conversation because they're like, stay in your lane and I'll still stay in mine. But no, that's an important factor, Core, of going out and looking, because one of the things like I used to in the past, like if somebody called me and they're like, hey, I'm not pre-approved, I haven't looked at the loans and stuff like that, can we go out and look at homes? And I did that like twice and I realized never again, because what happened was I show somebody a home, they fall in love with the home. By the time we go and get the pre-approval done, that house is pending and they're heartbroken now. So I'm like, no. Let's not put the carriage before the horse, right? Let's do it the right way. So a lot of times what lenders are going to look at is they're going to look at your debt to income, right? How much money you have going in, because they don't want you to stress out to the point where you're eating, you bought this house, but you're eating, ramen and stuff at night, right? Like They're going to look at your employment history, right? If you're self-employed, that takes a little bit of a different, process. They do have statement loans, bank statement loans that they can do. They've gotten pretty creative in the last couple of years as well, and kind of reintroducing some of these things. But typically, if you're in a job for at least 2 years, if you're not, if it's at least a like job, so if you go from delivering mail to being a mechanic, that's, and you've been a mechanic for, 3 months, that's probably not going to fly, right? Like that's too big of a broad of a change, right? But if you go from like one mechanical shop to another mechanical shop, that'll work. They're going to look at your credit report, credit history. That obviously speaks a lot of risk. And if the banks are going to be able to get their money back, they're going to look at your tax returns. So there's kind of a preliminary process. Now, one of the things that I do recommend, there's the pre-qual, which is like basic information and you're pre-qualified. There's the pre-approval, which is a harder look at all your qualifications. And then there's an underwritten pre-approval. And what I would recommend is if somebody's in the process of buying a house, because you can have a lender that looks at it, but really what happens is when you get into escrow, the reason why escrow is 30 days long is because the lender who you're talking to, they're trained to look at everything and make sure that you're going to qualify. But there's a gatekeeper that's called an underwriter. Those pesky underwriters. Their license depends on your loan being able to get sold right after it finishes. And so if they don't follow guidelines and they give you a loan and they can't sell it, like they're not going to have a job for a very long time, right? So when you get into escrow, and that's why I always tell people, super important, if you get into escrow, it's not the time for you to celebrate and go buy yourself a car, because that will mess up your debt to income. That'll mess up your credit score because you're going to have an inquiry. It will stop you from being able to purchase something. Don't buy anything until you finish. When your agent says you're on record and hands you the key, you can go buy yourself the Bentley, you can buy yourself whatever you want. Until then, don't even put things on your credit card. Don't even order furniture on the credit card that you want, because the balance is going to go up. So what'll happen is the underwriter, when you're in escrow, during the escrow process is when they'll check everything. Now, something that's really important is people need to understand is they check everything about you at the beginning, and they'll check everything about you again at the end. And so if you're 3 weeks into escrow and you think that this is all locked in and you decide to quit your job, you're probably going to get declined, right? Like they're not going to do it, because that underwriter is going to call and verify everything like last minute before they close everything. Now, one of the things that is hugely beneficial, and it gives you a huge leg up on everybody, is while you're going out and looking at homes, ask your realtor or ask your lender to submit your file to an underwriter and have the underwriter go through the process of basically doing what they were going to do in escrow before you get into escrow. Because if you have an underwritten pre-approval, that could make the difference between you getting the house and not. Because if somebody looks at it, like if I get an offer and it's a pre-qualified letter, and then I have a underwritten pre-approval, I'm going to let my sellers know that, hey, this guy, he's just starting out. This guy's smart. Like he's had the gatekeeper look at all his stuff and has verified that this guy's good to go. And so we have a significantly better chance of closing this deal with this guy than we do with this guy. The other thing that I would recommend is if you're going through that process, they're also going to look at your income, right? You don't have to liquidate funds if you're in, if you have investments and things like that. But one of the things that is very helpful is, so the lender is going to need proof of funds, POF. But a lot of times agents don't include the proof of funds when they're writing the offer. And that's going to be really important, especially if you're going above the list price. Because they're like, okay, if you got, if you're doing, if you're borrowing money to buy this house and you're writing an offer for more than what it's listed at, you can't afford the difference if the appraisal doesn't come in, right? So they're not going to take your offer seriously. And or if you do have the money to cover it and you don't provide it, again, they're not going to take you seriously. And so when you're going through that process, one, I would recommend get pre-approved. The lender will give you a portal. They'll send you a portal. You fill out your information. They'll give you everything that you need, all the stuff that you need. You can upload it right there. It's a secure link usually. They'll give you a pre-qualification. And one of the things that I also recommend is when you're doing a pre-approval, ask them to pre-approve you for the max. That doesn't mean you're going to need to use the max. But what's great is when you have the max, you can also actually ask them to give you a breakdown of what the monthly payments are going to be at specific thresholds. And so just because you're pre-approved for $800,000 doesn't mean that you're going to buy something for $800,000, right? You might want to be at like a $500,000 mark because that's what the monthly payment that you're comfortable with. But the reason why I say that is because core homes that are $400,000 are way different than homes that are $500,000. And the homes that are $500,000 are very different than homes that are $600,000. And so a lot of times when we start looking, if we know the max and we have the range, we can start where you're wanting. And, or, if we're realizing we're not really finding anything in that price point and you're like, no, 1,700 square feet is what I want. But then we've looked at like 1,700 square feet homes. 1,700 square feet there's only so many ways that you can split it. If it's not going to work, the last 10 homes that we've looked at, it's not going to work in the next 10. So maybe it's time for us to up it to like a 2,000 square foot home. And that way, that, okay, if we go from this price bracket to this price bracket, then this is what my payment is going to be. And if you're comfortable with that, and sometimes you're like, hey, I didn't really want to spend that much monthly. But again, kind of to your point of like, you could always refinance later if the rates come down. You might be able to push yourself a little bit to get to the price point that it actually makes sense, because it might be in the neighborhood that you want. It might be in the condition that you want. You don't have to, tear up and actually have construction going on in your home while you're living in it.
So the underwriter pre-approval and just the regular pre-approval, like I don't think anybody knows it. That's the very first time I've ever heard something like that. So that's a good tip, especially for people that are putting in a bid, even on the seller side. Mm-hmm. If I was to sell my house and I saw that, I would not have known the difference. Like, oh, what am I looking at? Right. So for someone who's like savvy in that regards, like that's why people got to go with Abel Simonyan, man. I'm telling you, those are the tips and the tricks. So you're going to need your W-2s, your bank statements, your income. They're going to do your employment verification, and then probably take your DNA type, and then give you a pre-approval.
Yeah. You got to, at this point with prices, they might need your firstborn as well, right?
That's right. So let's say now we get pre-approved, right? Mm-hmm. So we got all that. How do I even know where to start looking at homes? If I'm a very first-time home buyer, am I going to a website? Am I asking the realtor? Like, where do I go to start getting my leads?
Yeah. Well, this is where the misconception about realtors comes in, right? Because some agents are going to tell you, well, find something on Zillow, find something on Realtor.com and send it, right? Personally, I don't take that approach because it's not a very personal approach. It's not a custom approach. One of the things that you need to do is you need to sit down as an agent. You need to find out what's important to clients. Because a lot of times a buyer will know what's important to them. They just don't know where that home is and what that home actually looks like. And you need to take the time to show them. Corey, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you work at a dealership and I come in and I tell you, Corey, I want to look at this minivan and then I want to look at this convertible, but I'm going to only buy one, right? You'd probably think I'm confused out of my mind. Like, the guy that's buying the convertible usually isn't the guy that's buying the minivan, right? Unless you're buying both, like that's cool. But like, if you're just restricted to one, like which one is it? Like, are you a single guy, or like you need a weekend car, or do you need a family car? Because they're very different things. And what people don't think about in homes is homes can offer very different things. Like, if you have a house in Midtown, for example, that offers you something completely different than if you're in El Dorado Hills, right? Or if you're in Folsom, right? If you're in, the Pocket area. All these areas offer something completely different, and people don't know what they don't know, right? And for agents, that's one of the most important things to do, right? So what I would recommend is sit down with your client, with your agent, and give them a breakdown of like, this is what I want, right? This is, I want this many bedrooms. I want this many baths. This is the amount of square foot that I want. Sometimes people are like have a specific lot size in mind as well, right? Secondly, what a lot of agents don't do, and this might be just up, along that underwritten pre-approval thing, is realtors have the opportunities to send you a link right from the MLS where they can put in your criteria and they can put your information in there. And this is like custom catered for you, and they can pick different areas, right? So if you're like, hey, I want a house that's like single story. I really want it in a really good neighborhood. I want there to be at least a little bit of a yard, right? Whatever, pool and stuff like that. But I want to look in Folsom. I want to look in El Dorado Hills. I want to maybe look in Rancho. So they can put those specific criteria in place and they send it to you. Now, here's the nice thing about that, Core. If you're a buyer that's going on Zillow, if you've seen a home that's been on the market for 3 months, every stinking time you go on there, that home is still going to be on there, right? And you're going to be like, I'm so sick and tired of seeing this home, right? Every time I open up my app, this is here. With the way that we send it through actually the MLS portal, it gives you the opportunity to reject homes. And you can make a custom list. You can actually even go in there and like, even if that I put specific criteria in there and you go, I've changed my mind, I want to look at something different. You can actually go in there and you could tweak that to say, well, you know what? I really wasn't considering Shingle Springs, but like Shingle Springs has like bigger yards and stuff. It's a little bit of a drive, but I want to do that. You can go in there and you can tweak that and change it. But it gives you the opportunity through basically that link to communicate with your agent. Now, your agent needs to not be lazy and want to have the ability to go on there and communicate with you, because otherwise you're putting in there like, hey, man, this is really nice house. This is beautiful. And the agent's like, I never got your message. I don't know what you're talking about, right? But that's one of the things that's nice about it is it actually allows you to customize the list and what you have going on. Like you reject homes, they're not going to be on your list anymore. You don't have to worry about logging in and seeing them. And then the other thing that's really nice too is when you go in, homes that come on the market that are in your price point or meet the criteria will show up, and homes that drop in price will always be in there too. Right now, one of the biggest tips I would tell people is in this market right now, if you're looking at, let's say your budget's $500,000, go a little over, go to 520, go to 530. Not because you're going to spend the money, but because there's a chance that you can write a lower offer and get it down into your price point, right? So instead of looking at a $500,000 house and maybe getting it for 580 or 570, if you look at, because again, the higher price you go, the better homes you typically get, right? So if you see something that's on the market at 520, 530, 540, don't be afraid to look at it, because obviously your agent should be able to guide you through that, and they shouldn't just be order takers like, okay, I'll just write the offer, but they should be able to look at the market, and if there aren't any offers that are going on, they should be having conversations with the listing agent and just saying, hey, what's the take? What's going on, right? How's the seller feeling about this, right? Now, they're not going to sit there and divulge a bunch of, hopefully not, right? They're like, yeah, man, these people are just really desperate. Just write me a offer for $400,000, right? Like, I'll get it accepted, right? Like, I already lowered my price to half a point for the commission. So you know what? I don't really care about these people. But they should be able to tell you like, hey, no, they're pretty firm on the price. But that's something that a lot of agents don't do, man. They won't pick up the phone. Like, it irks me to no ends when I get an offer and I've never had a conversation with the agent. And I'm like, who are you? We're just like, you don't want to find out what's important to the sellers. Like you're just going to write an offer and send it in, but have those conversations. But those would be some of my tips and do that. The other thing that I would say is do not schedule more than 4 homes in one day. 4 is like the max. Try to stick to 3 homes. It sounds like a good thing to go look at like 5 or 6 homes. I promise you're going to get confused out of your mind. You're going to forget which bathroom goes with which kitchen, which home had which backyard, and it's going to get confusing. And if you do that multiple times, you're just going to be confused as all gets. Your agent should be able to tell you like, okay, let's, based on what you've told me is important, right? Help you guide, not just being order takers. Hey, based on what you've shared with me, these are the homes that I'm sending to you to look at, right? They should like vet some of these leads when they're sending them to you. Again, Corey, I've been doing this for 10 years. Usually we look at 3 homes and we're writing an offer on 1, right? Because we're strategic in the homes that we look at and we know what we're looking at. So these are the 3 best homes. If none of those work, okay, great. We'll just make another list of 3, but not where like I have agents that are like, I've been showing these people homes for 9 months. And I'm like, no wonder they're confused out of their minds. Like, stop showing them that many homes. Like, it's just, you're confusing them. It's never good to do that. I mean, it sounds like the noble thing to do, but you're just going to confuse people and they're going to end up just not buying. They're going to get frustrated and back out of the buying process.
It sounds like there could be some paralysis analysis going on where you're going into 4, 5, 6 homes a day. Yeah. It's just too overwhelming, and then you get stuck, can't make a decision because you're like, which one? And I think for sure I would get confused about layouts and what pros and cons, backyard sizes. Oh, this had that and that had that. I forget about it all.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is, and I've seen this before, is when you're writing an offer, I feel like I owe it to the industry to say, nobody in the real estate industry looks at Z estimates. I've never seen
what is that exactly for people that
yeah,
don't know?
it's like an algorithm that Zillow came up with. So they're looking at like if your house is 1,500 square feet, they're comparing it to other 1,500 square foot homes. But there could be a home that's 1,500 square feet that's 2-story, and then your house could be a 2-story 1,500 square foot house. Well, single stories are always going to sell for more, right? And no appraiser is going to compare a single story to a double story or vice versa, right? So you look at that and people are like, oh, Z estimate shows that this house is worth $400,000. And I'm pulling up comps and I'm like, well, real estate agents, realtors don't look at Z estimate. No appraiser is going to ever look at that. And here's why, right? Here's the comps that we're going to look at. And even when I'm listing a home or we're looking to purchase, I will pull up MLS, and I'll go in and I'll show them, I will show them pending, just so we can see what's currently happening with the homes. We can't use those for comps because they're still pending.
Yeah.
But I will also show them homes that have already closed, right? And I can say, okay, this is, based on this is kind of where the price point needs to be. And we can kind of make a determination. But I've had people where like we walk in to look at a house and the husband's not even looking at the house because he's in the corner and he's going to every single website to find the lowest like value suggestion to be like, well, this house is listed at 800,000. Well, this one says 725. So we should offer. I'm like, I mean, ultimately it's your prerogative. We can offer whatever you want, but I can tell you it's not worth 725 because that's just a website with a horrible algorithm that's not looking at the right things.
And I'm sure you get those same low ball offers and everything that you kind of mentioned earlier because people are doing that.
Yeah.
But you did mention something that I wish more realtors would do is to do the counter offer, because I can see people just in their mindset of, let me just lowball offer, just see what happens, And if they're serious sellers, they'll just counter me, and I'm willing to pay more for the house. I just want to see what happens.
Right.
And so they'll just push in a lowball offer just to see kind of where the seller's at, test the waters, because you're playing with hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are homes, right? So buyers can get kind of like picky like that. And if it's an inexperienced seller's agent, they may not take the time to do that counter offer, and that could close the deal because the buyer is definitely willing to come up. They know they're doing the lowball offer. They know the list price. They know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So the seller's the buyer is probably going to offer a higher price if you do the counter and you make it maybe a little bit of a discount. I mean, you mentioned if you're at a $500,000 range, you could probably go up. That's like, what is that, 5%? So 525 in a buyer's market, kind of where we're at right now. You may be able to structure the offer in such a way where it makes sense for them to accept it, right? It's a little bit above what you wanted to pay, but it may end up, the seller may come down. I mean, in the seller's market, they may not do it at all, but depending on how it is, it's not bad to just go a little bit above what your price point is to see how the market reacts, and maybe you'll find a little bit of a better home. So those are all good tips and tricks. When buyers are kind of looking at homes now that, they're working with an agent, getting all these leads, is there something that they regret not checking after they get the keys? I mean, obviously not with you because you're the best realtor in the world, but
of course.
But maybe with that inexperienced realtor, what would be some of those buyer mistakes that kind of slip through the cracks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the most important things I think is inspections and getting the right inspections done. What happens a lot of times that I see is I don't allow buyers to sway me because they're in that honeymoon phase. And they're like, wow, this is the best looking house I've ever seen. This is so pretty. I'll pay all the money. I don't want put any contingencies in there. I don't want anything fixed. I don't even want inspections done. And I'm like, no. We're going to have a conversation. Because I know exactly what's going to happen. Because after and I've seen this a million times, we get the inspections done, and all of a sudden the inspector is going through and showing him what's going on, and the honeymoon phase starts fading very quickly, right? And you're like, wow, like I didn't realize that was going on. And so one of the most important things that I would say with buyers is getting inspections done that need to be done. You need to rely on the home inspector specifically for inspections that they recommend, right? Give you an example. We're doing an inspection on a house. The home inspector says, hey, you guys need to get a sewer line inspection done because the sewer line runs through the front yard and there's massive trees that are there. My buyer's like, no, I don't want to do it. I'm like, I should probably do it. We should probably do it. She's like, yeah, I'm good. At that point, I've been in this long enough where I actually have a buyer sign something saying that they're not getting an inspection contrary to my suggestion. And sure enough, she calls me back like 3 days after moving in, and she goes, "Abel!" And I'm like, "Hey." She's like, "I just did laundry and my sewer line just backed up into my bathtub."
Oof.
She ends up getting the inspections done after fact, and she realizes that there's tons of roots that are growing into this, and and usually with those, I mean, it's like an ongoing process. You have to keep getting those sprayed because it kills off the root, and obviously roots keep growing, and so like you have to. It's like a regular maintenance. She didn't want to do that, and I've even had a client where he's like, "Well, don't worry about inspections. Whatever needs to, get fixed, I'll fix it afterwards." And I'm like, okay. And again, I have him sign something. I'm like, this is against my advice. You're not going to do it. And then he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, the HVAC's not working." And I'm like, okay, and why didn't we get this inspected? I'm like, hang on a second. Yeah. Hey, open your email. You see that document? Yeah. You see where it says that you went against my recommendations not to have the home inspected? Yeah. That's why this is why, because we had a conversation and you told me, don't worry about it. I'll cover it. And, it's going to be all good. I think one of the biggest things too, Corey, that we have to look at is, don't be in a rush to get credits in lieu of repairs. A lot of agents will push clients to get credits in lieu of repairs. That can end up costing you a lot of money. I'll give you an example. I had a client up in Applegate. House sits up on a hill. The basement is right here. The dirt basically runs into it because it's on a hill. The appraiser actually calls out for a mold test. We get it done. There's a ton of mold that's going on in the house, right? Well, initially we were thinking, okay, we'll just get a credit, but I was like, I don't know. Like, I think this actually needs to get fixed before we close the house. He's like, no, let's just get like a $5,000, $10,000 credit and we'll be good. And I'm like, no, let's get some inspections done. So we had a mold remediation company that went out there. They ended up taking massive amounts of sheetrock off of the house. They basically discard all of that. They can't even, they clean the rest of it. Long story short, because again, there's a hill and it's running in there. There's no drainage that's going on, and the water is running right into the wall. And so we actually had to get a contractor, landscaper out that actually put a retaining wall up like 10 feet before you get to the wall of the house, 10 or 15 feet, put a French drain behind that. And then he dug in right at the wall where the wall was, and he put a French drain at the bottom, like at 9-10 feet, filled it with gravel, put another French drain, and then filled it up with another like 2 feet of gravel. Between those two things, it was like $35,000.
Wow.
Had we just taken the credit, had we just taken the $5,000, $10,000 credit, we would have been like, my buyers would have been like $20,000, $22,000 deep in getting all this stuff fixed. They have a kid, they have a kid that was going to be like kind of in the lower rooms and stuff like that was going to be sleeping in there. That would be horrible. That would have been a nightmare. I mean, all kinds of issues. I've even had a scenario in Mather actually, where smack down in the middle of inspections, my inspector's like, "I think this wall's been opened." And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Yeah, it's been opened." So he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, let's get it open. Let's ask the sellers to open it.
Yeah.
So I get a contractor out there and he's opening it up. He's like, "Yeah, this has definitely been opened." And I'm like, "How do you know that?" He's like, because home builders, the screws are too expensive. They use nails. And he's like, "This whole sheetrock up here is all held up here with screws." We open up the wall. Corey, I kid you not. So let's say this is the floor between the first and the second floor. There's a window that's upstairs and there's a window downstairs. The upstairs window had been leaking, and the wall right below the upstairs window and all the area downstairs, complete mold. They just opened it up. They bleached over it. They painted over it so it wouldn't get caught in the tests and stuff. And they closed everything back up. The buyer was initially like, "Hey, let's just move forward. I don't want to open that up, and then I'm going to have to close it and stuff." And I'm like, nah. I feel like we're going to find something good here, like let's get it done. And so sure enough, we opened it and there's a lot. So I think there's no substitute for good inspectors and good inspections. Funny story, again, last one, I promise we'll move on. this house I just closed on maybe a couple months ago in Roseville. Told my guy, I'm like, hey, I have home inspectors and pest inspections and roof inspection that we can get done. He's like, no, I'll find my own, right? Oh, he's like, no, I don't know if I trust your guys. And I'm like, okay, do your own inspections. So he does his own inspections. And then 2 weeks after they close, they call me up and they're like, we just ripped up the carpets and found a bunch of mold.
Oof.
I'm like, well, thank God I dodged that one. Thank you, Lord. Because I was like, hey, if you don't trust my guys, just find your own guys. And so then like not that I'd be liable anyways, because I provide you, but it sometimes when people are looking for somebody to blame, they'll be like, well, these are your recommendations. These are your inspectors and stuff. Right. But they kind of did their own. And sure enough, there's a bunch of things that were missed and they had to figure it out.
Man, that's such good advice for buyers specifically. I mean, one, you're dropping the inspections because you're like, oh, it's $700 here, $800 here, $1,000 here, and you're about to spend 5, 6, 8, who knows how many hundreds of $1,000s on this home, and this few thousand can save you so much money of things that you don't know because you don't know what you don't know, and you get into it, and all of a sudden, expense here, expense there, expense here, expense there, and it's just crazy. So. Really great tip. Don't drop. That's a common mistake. I mean, if people want to save a few dollars, it could be thousands, if not 50s or tens or hundreds of $1,000s later on. Yeah. So do the inspections 100%. That makes a lot of sense. And then the seller's credit, I think, was also a really good one because instead of taking the seller's credit, take the repair. Yeah. Because once you do the repair, it may cost you way more than you originally estimated because then there's, oh, we found this and then we found that. Right. And then, oh, by the way, now you need this because now something else happened in the process. Like that's just crazy. So those are definitely things I don't think, like those are not common. People would typically be like, yeah, seller's credit, repair, it's the same thing to me. Like, what's the difference, right? But it's completely not in hindsight. Yep. What is a temporary rate buy down for someone? Like, what is specifically that thing?
The rate buy down really gives you an on-ramp to where it'll lower your rates because the rate is lower, it'll lower your monthly payment the first year, and then it'll go up a little bit more, and then it'll go back the third year. It'll go to what it was normally going to be and what it's going to be for the next 27 years, right? So I like to think of it that way, where it's like, you get a little break if you can. Still, if your payment's $3,500 instead of $4,000 your first year, if you can make that still $4,000 payment, like we talked about, you'll pay the interest rate or the principal off a little bit faster. Do that. If not, then it'll actually allow you to kind of steadily grow into it. The other part that's really nice too is with that is if you're in a job where you're constantly maybe getting raises, you're getting a raise once a year or twice a year, it would give you the ability to not maybe be as stressed the first year because it's going to be a lower payment. You get a raise the second year, the rates go up a little bit more, right? Or your payment goes up a little bit more. And the fourth year you get a raise. So your income will grow as the payment grows, but it's not an indefinite thing. There is a way to do that, but it's going to be really costly. But this is just an on-ramp for you to be able to get up to what your normal monthly payments are going to be.
Yeah. So for the buyer, it's like, oh, geez, I need to go up a little bit. If I could just get a little bit of a break first 2 years and I could afford it 2 years down the line because I'm going to get the promotions. Right. It's a consistent thing. Then they could maybe get in the house to have a temporary break while they anticipate the promotions to be able to make it all work. But how do you get that? I mean, do I just ask my realtor, give me a rate buy down, or who do I go to for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So your lender is going to be the one that does that. Now, here's something to think about too. There are real estate or lending brokers that basically have a portfolio of a bunch of companies that they work with, and they can actually shop rates. They can actually shop different scenarios for that. So sometimes, for example, if you have people that aren't in their job for 2 years, if you go to a lending broker, they might be able to shop around and actually find a lender that maybe instead of having to wait for you to be in a job for 2 years, they can lend with somebody that's been on a job for a year, right? So that's something that's really important, is if you have that, you do have more options. But your lender, really the way that I always portray it, and this might be a good imagery of like the difference between the lender and the real estate agent, right? The lender gives you the money, I help you spend it. Right? So they are the ones that do all the paperwork. They don't negotiate the contracts for you. They don't go show you homes. They don't negotiate any of that stuff. They don't help you with the inspections. They just simply, their main job is to make sure that the amount of money that we need is there for us to close. Because when you're about to close the house, what's going to happen is they're going to ask, like, let's say I'm getting ready to close. I'm going to wire my money to escrow. And then the bank is going to wire their portion of the money to escrow. And when escrow has all of the money that's needed to close this, then and only then do they close, they record the transaction with the county, and then they'll disperse the funds as they need to, right? And so the lender's job is to get you the credits, right? To look at rates, to look at your credit report, to look at your jobs, right? To talk to the underwriter, right? To do all these things. And that's also who you want to talk to. So if you want to do like the underwritten approval, because the nice thing about that is that if you're going to be looking at homes for the next 2-3 weeks, just have them submitted. It's not going to cost you anything more. Like it's not going to be painful at all because it's the same information. They're just submitting it. And instead of just wasting time 2-3 weeks later, you're looking at you get into escrow and now the underwriter gets involved. You can just ask them to do that. And then a lot of times the reason why agents will have preferred lenders, like I have a preferred lender that I work with. When you find somebody that works really hard and diligently and gets creative in making sure that loans get done and they're getting funded and people are not getting canceled out or losing their deposits, you kind of tend to stick with them. And that's one of the things that's nice with that is if you find an agent that has a preferred lender and they work well together, that's where kind of all the magic happens because the agent and the lender are kind of on the same mind train, and they can tell you, hey, like this is what we're going to do. We're going to borrow some money here. This is what we're going to do. So typically when I'm doing a transaction, anything that has to do with the lending part, I'm on the phone with my lender. Hey, if we get this much credit, what can you do with it? Can you find somewhere, can you do something with 15 grand, right? Like if we use $10,000 for the buy down, or with that customer with like, I've had customers that had $30,000 worth of dry rot on the house that needed to get fixed and we just got credits for it. Okay, we got 30,000 because we had actual contractors go out and bid those and stuff. But $30,000 of credits, there's only so much that you could do. You can't make money off of it. Escrow's not going to cut you a check when you're buying a house. And so I called my lender and I'm like, can you get creative with this $30,000 so that my buyer doesn't lose the money? And she's like, yeah. Like she starts like, hey, we're going to buy this. We're going to pay this down, right? Like lower their amounts and stuff. And so that conversation is really had when it comes to the lending part it's really had with the lender. The lender will do a lot of that. When it comes to the negotiating on the home side, it'll be the agent. But even at the end, like one of the last contingencies is the loan contingency. I'll call the agent or the lender and I'll verify that we can remove that contingency. But one of the things that I do is I get my buyer on the phone with the lender and I have them hear it from the horse's mouth because I don't want anything to come back to me like, oh, Abel said that the loan was clear. No, you guys had a conversation, right? But they're the ones that govern everything that has to do with the loan. And I'm solely responsible for making sure that the agent's not getting crazy. They're not trying to like hide anything. The disclosures are done right. We're looking at everything that we possibly can. If the appraisal comes in low, I'm negotiating on your behalf to make sure that, your money is spent well. So I think I have the funner job. I get to help people spend their money.
That does definitely sound funner, spending someone else's money.
Right.
I can't just go to my lender and say, I'm going to give you 10 grand. Can you give me a temporary rate buy down, right? It has to go through, I guess when I'm getting pre-approved or when I'm getting underwriting. And I'm just saying, hey, I want to do that to them. Can I just go straight to the lender and say, can I just pay the lender directly for that temporary rate buy down? Oh, so then it doesn't matter. I could go straight to the lender, or I could do it through seller's credits. Right. So there's both avenues could get me the rate. Okay, gotcha. Right. That's where I was like, how is it one or the other? But it's both. It's both.
Yeah, you can do both. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. So then you kind of alluded to this, but like, what are escalation clauses, especially with now it doesn't even appraise for the price that it was listed at? How do I kind of structure that offer? Well, let me just ask, what is the escalation clause? And how do you structure those escalation clauses to be in your benefit?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. So one of the things, the escalation clauses are kind of cool. Not a lot of agents know about them. Not a lot of agents use them, but it's kind of like a wild card. Right? There's a million ways that we could do it. So what I've actually done in the past too is if I'm writing an offer and there's multiple offers coming in, what I will put in there is I will put in like an escalation clause and I will say, we're offering $900,000, but we will offer up to $5,000 over the highest offer up to $950,000, for example. Like I'm offering 900, but I'm willing to go up to 955. right? So in that case, what happens is I'm not overshooting and I'm not offering $955,000, because if there's an offer that's like 930, 940, I don't want to just come out of pocket and pay all this money, right? So I can structure it that way and say, I'm willing to pay. You just prove to me that there was an offer that came in, and I'll give you $5,000 more. Now, on the flip side, when we do the inspections, something to keep in mind, and this is it's typically sellers that will try to like merge these two contingencies together because it's more beneficial for them, right? So you have the inspection contingency that happens, the appraisal contingency that happens, and then you have the loan contingency that happens. The loan has nothing to do with the price as long as the appraisal contingency comes in well, right? So what happens is you have this section right here where you're negotiating repairs, and then you have the appraisal to where if the appraisal comes in lower, so the appraisal will come in one of three ways. It'll come in higher than what your purchase price is. It'll come in at the purchase price, or it'll come in lower. If it comes in higher or at, you don't do anything. If you're the buyer, you're paid for it. You just, you're like, you give yourself a pat on the back. You're like, I got $5,000 or $10,000 of, equity in the house, and you just move on, right? Or if it's at value, you just move on. Now, if it comes in lower, keep in mind with the inspections, you can go back and ask them for money. With the appraisal, you can ask them to lower the price, right? So then what happens is, let's say I'm representing you as a seller. We put the house on the market. And I actually had a friend of mine that kind of got screwed royally with this. And he was I had met him, I want to say like 3 weeks into escrow, and he was at the tail end of it. And so like when he and I started talking, he's like, I wish I would have met you earlier. They had agreed up front to give the buyers like a $20,000 credit, right? Which is great. The agent didn't think about how that's going to affect the appraised value, because if the house becomes appraised less, now they're lowering the price and still giving the $20,000 credit, right? So that exact same thing happened, right? So they went into escrow. The house ended up coming back appraised for $30,000 less, and they had already agreed to give them a $20,000 credit. So they were now $50,000 less than where they started, right? And he's like, holy smokes, like how do we go $50,000 is quite a bit, right? Even with the appraisal, because appraisals are subjective, right? Like I've had the same house appraised twice within a week, and it came back with a $30,000 difference, right? It's like, and their appraisers are very sensitive. I hope there's none watching. They're very sensitive. You can't tell them what to do, right? So in that case, what I told them is I said, listen, what you can do is you can do an escalation clause. And what I would have done is I would have said, hey, if the house appraises for this much, right, for the full purchase price, you're going to get all $20,000 back. Every $10,000 that it goes down in appraised value, you're going to lose $10,000 in credits. So if it comes back in appraised at 500, you're going to get $20,000 credit. If it comes back in appraised at 580, you're going to get $10,000 of credit. So it'll be 580 and a $10,000 credit. If it comes, or 590, if it comes back in at 580, I'm selling you the house for 580 and you're not going to get a credit, right? But this way what happened was, and it kind of slowly goes down, but this way what happened was they lowered the price because these people didn't have enough money to be able to come out of pocket to cover the appraisal difference. And they had already agreed to the credit, so they were stuck. They couldn't do anything about it. They were like, okay, well, we're just giving away extra $20,000. And had they had the right agent, and this is why, right? And this was like a $400,000 or $500,000 house, right? So the difference between 1.5% and 2.5% would have been $4,000. But you see how that extra $4,000 that somebody could be potentially wanting to save because they just want an agent, literally just cost them $30,000, because there's also ways to structure appraisals and get rid of some of that stuff up front and negotiate some of that stuff up front. And or we talked about proof of funds, right? Did anybody check proof of funds to make sure that this person could purchase the house for more than it was appraised? That was probably a surprise, right? They probably got the appraisal, and the buyer's agent came back and was like, sorry, we can't afford to pay anything over the appraised value because the bank won't lend past that. And so you're going to have to lower the price, and you're going to have to give them a credit because we already signed the credit. The seller can't change their mind. They can't be like, no, I don't want to do that. No, we have a signed contract. Sorry, that's already in effect.
Dang, but if it doesn't appraise, they can't just cancel. The seller can be like, no, I'm not going to sell it at the appraised price. And then they could just say no, right? I mean, the buyer didn't have to.
They'd have to cancel.
Come up cancel and come up with the difference.
Yeah. So
and it makes it sticky for everybody, though. You could potentially lose a buyer. It's not talked about up front.
Right.
It's all like in the air at that point. So
right.
I didn't actually know about the escalation clause on the other side of it, where, because like, man, I really want this home, but I don't want to overpay for it.
Right.
But I also don't want to get outbid.
Right.
So you structure the escalation clause and you say, hey, bid is, there's 500,000 easy number to work with. So 500,000, willing to go up to 550, but I'm not going to pay you 550 if you don't get another offer in above mine.
Right.
But I don't want to lose the house either.
Right.
And I've never seen the escalation clause. This is the first time hearing of it.
Yeah.
Where I could incrementally always beat out the top bidder.
Right.
Because I just this is the house. This is I want this one.
Right.
So I don't have to overbid at like 750 right from the jump to lock myself in.
Right.
And now I'm just spending extra money. I can use that for so many other things.
Right.
So on the flip side, the escalation clause coming on the appraisal where it comes down, it kind of makes it a stronger offer. Even as a seller, I'm not giving away extra money I don't have to give. I'm letting the buyer know up front, hey, if it doesn't appraise, you're going to lose your credits. And that way there's no surprises.
Right.
Everybody shakes on it, and then they can't say, oh, give it to me less. Like, oh, we agreed to an escalation clause, so you're right. The contract's still valid. Now you have to buy it or you lose your deposit in a way because of the appraisal. You can't back out. It's already discussed. Right. It's not like a new thing that wasn't negotiated ahead of time. Right. So that gives the seller more ability to lock in that sale because they were going to sell it for 580 regardless. Right. And now they're selling for 580 what they wanted. No more seller's credit. Right. So boom, they get the deal, and I guess they win. Both sides can win, buyers and sellers with the escalation clause. Yeah. Where do they teach you this stuff?
They don't. This is stuff that I just, as I've gone through, it's the more you do this, I think there's a certain aspect of being creative that needs to be a part of this. Corey, I've even had clients like in 2021 and even 2017 and stuff like that, where the market was crazy. It's hot. We can't find any homes. I would literally find off-market deals. And I'm going to give you a little secret. I know I'm going to shoot myself in the leg, but you know what I would do? I would go and look for homes that were canceled, that were taken off the market. And I would call them and I'd be like, hey, I have clients that are interested. Would you guys still want to sell? And they're like, yeah. They put an offer together and I'm not competing against anybody else and I'm not having to do this. And so like a new house comes on the market and it's been on the market for, 2 hours and they have 30 offers on it. We're not having to deal with any of that, right? You have somebody that's already kind of a seller that's kind of already upset, right? They didn't get the money that they want. So their spirits are a little broken, right? And they're maybe a little more humble, right? And they're more willing to accept an offer that's in a more realistic price. And I'm sitting here like, churning, deals left and right. And people are like, what the heck are you doing? And I'm like, I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you. And I'm like calling people up and I'm like, hey, Mr. Buyer, hey, Mr. Seller, hey, Mr. Buyer's or seller's agent. Like, hey, your house was on the market, didn't sell. I have a buyer. Like, what do you think? I'd go out or I would look at homes like hot market. There's a house that's been on the market for 60 days. That's the one that we're going to look at. I tell my clients, do not look at any homes that have been on the market for less than 30 days. 30 days and more, those are going to be the ones that we're going to get a chance in. We'd go in and we'd offer less and we'd get into a contract. We'd go in, offer less, and we'd go into contract. And a part of that is just really having an agent. And when you have 80% that do 1 to 2 transactions, this isn't their bread and butter, right? This is my bread and butter. This is how I feed my kids. This is how I send my kids to school. This is how I pay for everything. And so for me, there's a lot of vested interest where I'm like, I have somebody that has a very unique situation. I need to figure this out. Like I've even had times where somebody wants a specific property in the neighborhood, can't find it. Guess what Abel does? I call up my escrow officer. I have her pull up a list of every single homeowner in that neighborhood that has the specific model that I want. And I'm going to their house with letters and I'm like, hey, I have a client that's interested in buying this house. And if it's a crazy hot market, I don't want them to go on the market because everybody and their mom's going to see it and they're going to be bid. Hey, I have a client that's really interested. They're ready, willing. It's a beautiful family. Here's a picture of them. I'm not just trying to solicit, here's a picture of them, right? We can't do that in California anymore. But before we could send letters and stuff, but I would go in and I'd be like, no, listen, I'm not trying to get you to list your house with me. I have a legitimate buyer that's wanting to buy. You take a little bit of extra work. My buyers come out, we tour the house. There's no pressure. They don't like the house. They don't like the price. We move on. But we go and tour it, and I'll negotiate on both ends. If the seller wants to get their agent involved, great. If not, then I could do it, save them some money. We get it done. And so a lot of that, like the creativity of like escalation clauses, right? Hey, I don't want to offer $600,000 on this $500,000 house. If the next highest bid is $550,000, I don't want to. I'm not an idiot. I don't want to just give away $50,000. Let's figure out a way. Okay, hey, start asking around, start doing some research. Escalation clause it is. Write it up and send it in, and all of a sudden, seller's agent sends me proof of one of the other offers that came in. Hey, here's where the other offer came in. You said you'd write me something for $10,000 more. It's within that bracket because you don't want to give them unlimited access. Hey, somebody offered $1 million, right?
Right. No, yeah,
cap that. Yeah. I don't want to put my buyers in a bad position, right, or my sellers in a bad position. But it's about just being creative with it, and it's really important to do that.
That's crazy. Yeah, that is really good. So then you mentioned that sometimes you might use the letters to get homes that aren't listed yet, and then you can look at houses that are over 30 days old because that might be where you have less competition. Mm-hmm. Does the age of the home ever come into the picture, especially in the buying end? Like, should buyers look at the age of the home, or does that matter or not?
The age of the home comes with the territory, literally, right? Like I have people that fantasize about living in the Fab 40s, right? Or like Midtown. And I'm like, I don't know if you're ready for a 100-year-old home. And a lot of people, when they get into that, they're like, wow, I didn't realize what goes into this. And I'm like, yeah, taking care of and living in a 100-year-old house is not a walk in the park. This is not a house in El Dorado Hills. Yeah, you get the beautiful view and you get the architecture and you get all the really nice nuances and stuff. But one of the things that, I think that really dictates that is going to be price in the area that they want to be in. That'll really kind of determine where they need to be. Now, one of the things that I always tell people is when we do inspections, right? Like, I don't want to get into the weeds, but like Zinsco panels, right? Where everybody and their mom back in like the 60s and 70s used to use Zinsco panels. They had market domination and they had lawsuits. And so now they're recalled, right? And so we'll do an inspection and the home inspector's like, oh my God, there's a Zinsco panel on this house. Like this house is going to burn down. And I'm like, this house has been here for 70 years. If we walk down the street, almost every single one of these homes has a Zinsco panel. If you're worried about it, we can ask for like a $5,000-$6,000 credit and we can get it upgraded. But there's definitely like your price point will usually determine what age of a home that you're going to purchase. And then if you have unlimited amount, and you have $2 million, we can look at a Fab 40 house, but again, you're looking at a 100-year-old house, or we can go get you a really nice newer house in Loomis. Loomis is popping. I freaking love Loomis. It's beautiful out there. Like the acreage, the homes and stuff, it's gorgeous. But, so that'll actually really determine that. And that'll make a lot of, now, one of the things to inspection wise, again, that's important is, you ever see where, this is probably going to make a lot of sense to people, but like you're in the shower and your wife like flushes the toilet and the water goes down and then comes back up, right?
Yeah.
That's usually because you have galvanized pipes, right? Like they're like arteries, they're starting to close up. So you're doing a home inspection and the home inspector's like, hey, you see the shower? See how it's like this, the pressure that's going? And they flush the toilet and it dims a little bit. Well, you have to start thinking about, what are you going to do with those pipes? Are you going to repipe the house? And again, since it's not a health and safety violation, we'll try to negotiate that. We'll try to get as much money as we can back from, the sellers, but it's not a brand new house, right? You can't expect brand new pipes in an older house. And if they do, it's a great bonus.
I guess your budget will dictate how old of a house you're going to pretty much get, but then even more reason to make sure you get those inspections done.
Right.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of that stuff can be covered up and then just more negotiating power at the end of the day.
Yep.
So pretend I'm a seller and I don't know anything about selling a house. I bought the house, know that process, but don't know how to sell the house. So what is the process? What is everything that goes into selling a house?
That's a really good question. So the first thing that you want to do is just like you are with buying, you want to interview agents. There's this really good balance because with listing agents, usually you start doing more listing agents when you're more seasoned. But a lot of times some of these people will have teams that are massive. And that's one of the reasons why I try not to overgrow my team. And I'm still an active agent because what'll happen is I'll call you, but I'll get Corey's team. So I don't actually deal with you. I get an agent that's brand new. So even though it's branded under your umbrella, I'm actually still getting a brand new agent that may not know what they're doing, right? And so, I interview with one guy and I get somebody else, right? So that part is really important. One of the things that you really want to fine tune and get with an agent is somebody that, just like with a buyer's agent, right, that know what they're doing, that understand the market, right? Again, if you look at comps, if somebody is pulling up comps and showing you what's happened, comps are what happened in the last 6 months. The market can shift in 24 hours. What's happening right now may not reflect in the comps that you're looking at in the 6 months, right? So making sure that you have an agent that's actively not only just pulling up homes that have sold that are comparable to your house, but also they're looking at and guiding you through how to actually look at active listings that are going to sell, right? Or pending listings. The other thing that they want to do is, even though that's not a part of the comp, is they want to look at active listings, right? What I always tell people is, Corey, if I put your house on the market, your house is either going to help somebody else's house sell, or their house is going to help you sell your house, right? Mm-hmm. If they see your house is, we listed at $800,000, $1 million, right? And there's a house that's like way nicer for $900,000, that house is going to sell, our house is going to help that house sell faster, right? Because buyers are going to look at that and they're going to be like, well, I can get way more over here than I can over here. And so that's something that's really important. The other part I would really caution sellers with is, as much as you can, take the emotions out. This is a transactional deal. This is, I know money is important and there's a lot, that goes into it, but you have to find an agent that you can trust and trust them. Because what'll happen is, what I've seen before is, I tell a seller, hey, based on the market, based on what I'm seeing, it's your prerogative. We can list for however you want, but this is what we're looking at. But at the end, we end up being on the market longer and we end up chasing the market down. And so at the end, we actually sell the house for less than we could have if we would have put the house on the market correctly, and we still follow the strategies. I can employ all of my marketing strategies as much as I can, and I can go above and beyond. Like, I had a house where we did a mega open house. We had Benji's Pizza come out and they catered it, right? I had a winery come out. They had wine out, right? I had balloon, face painting and balloons and stuff like that. But if, the marketing will draw people in, but if we're not priced well and you get too emotionally connected because, like, oh, my kid was born in this room and like we painted this room and blah, 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 you can shoot yourself in the leg like heavily. I actually had a client when I just started out in real estate. I would door knock. I would go around and door knock. I still do like farming and stuff like that, but I was door knocking. I met this guy, older gentleman, super sweet, super nice guy. I got to talk to him. I hung out for like 45 minutes with him. Like a year later, I get a phone call and I go to the house and I'm like, oh, I know this house. So I go in and it's that guy's daughter. And she's like, yeah, my dad passed away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I met your dad. He's such a sweet guy. She's like, thank you. So we kind of had a bond because she's interviewing all these agents, but I've actually met her dad. I told her, I was like, hey, honestly, like, I think we need to list this house at $700,000. She goes, no way. This house is worth $780,000, $790,000. Corey, I was like, I usually don't take listings like that. And I will let clients know really nicely, like, I'm not the agent for you. Like, it's not me, it's you. But with this client, with this seller, because I had met the dad, I was inclined to kind of take her on because there's an emotional connection. And I said, okay, we'll list it 780. We got offers at 760. She wouldn't take it. Then we didn't get any offers at all. We lowered the price to 760. Then we got offers at 740. She wouldn't take it. Then we ended up lowering the price home 740. Long story short, we ended up selling that house for like 680, 670, right? If we would have listed the house on the market for 700,000, 720, we would have gotten 730, 740, 750 very easily for that house. And the reason why I can tell you that is because I literally have stories of even in Elk Grove where I listed a house. The lady was like, list it for 900,000. I'm like, no way, we're going to list it at 8. We listed it at 8. We got multiple offers. We accepted an offer at $890,000, all contingencies removed. Another house came on the market like a week later at $890,000. It went pending. My seller was pissed. She's like, you cost me money. We should have listed on the market at $890. That agent called me back and she goes, hey, what did you guys appraise at? And I'm like, we don't have an appraisal. Why? She's like, because my house got appraised at 800,000 and the seller or the buyer isn't willing to come up that much. And now we're having to cancel, and they had to cancel and wait for my escrow to close. So they actually had comps to be able to sell their house for a higher price. You have to find somebody that's an agent, that's somebody that's trustworthy, that you can trust and say, hey, this person is on my on my side. They're going to take care of me. People are like, well, sellers will say, well, I don't care about the time. I want the most amount of money. Okay. You're not going to make more money the longer your house stays on the market. It's actually the opposite. The longer a house stays on the market, the less you're going to make, right? So that's one of the biggest things that I would give people advice. I have that conversation on a regular basis where people are like, well, I feel like my house is worth more. And I'm like, unfortunately, there's no price tag I can put on feelings. Appraisers don't take feelings into consideration when they're appraising the house. And so we're really going to have to be realistic, especially in a market like this. It would behoove a seller to even price it a little bit lower to get more people to look at the house and bring the house price up than to chase the market down.
Yeah, it's almost like the reverse then, because especially for first-time sellers, they're like, okay, I have so much equity. I want to get this money out. I want to get top dollar for the house because I got no money. I'm broke. So I'm going to try to make some money because every $1,000 counts. And so they're going for the top dollar in the market. They're like, okay, we're going to get it, blah, blah, blah. My house is the best. But in actuality, people are looking at that. They're looking at the other houses. And from the buyer's perspective, they're like, I don't know. It's a little bit overpriced. I'm either going to lowball it or I'm not even going to waste my time. Right. So you get no traffic. It sits. And then you got to do that price reduction. And then those original buyers are gone. It sit. People have seen it. The curiosity effect is gone. And then you just start chasing that market all the way down. So for a first-time seller, it's like the opposite. Price it under the market, because then everybody's gonna be like, oh, great. A decent house came in a little bit under market. If there's little blemishes, they may even overlook it, and they may even bid it up more than what you wanted, or at least you get it somewhat close to what it's worth, rather than just overshooting it because you're greedy, you're seeing dollar signs. Your first time, you're going to have actual money in your hands. Right. And so, that's kind of what happens. You get the buyers, the sellers get the emotions, get the best of them. So you really got to take a step back and not go for the top dollar. Go for something that's reasonable. Get people to come in, get an actual offer. Right. And don't shoot yourself in the foot by just chasing the money, because then the house is not going to, and you're going to get less at the end of the day. Yeah. So I can see a lot of sellers falling into that trap, because that's their first time ever having equity, first time actually having a big paycheck that's going to come out of selling the house. And definitely trust your realtor, I guess. Bottom line, trust your realtor.
There's a really good saying, Corey, and I think it has to be a reminder, constant reminder, especially to sellers, right? And the reminder is what basically real estate at its core is, the core belief of value of homes, right? The value of a home is what a able buyer is willing to pay on an open market. Has nothing to do with appraisal. I've seen homes that are appraised for $800,000 that sell for $1 million. And I've seen homes that are appraised for $1 million sell for $600,000, $700,000, right? That part does not matter, because what happens is you have somebody that comes in, and I made the mistake of in the beginning, I'd have people that are like, oh, this house is beautiful, right? What do you think? And I'm like, well, this is the worst model, right? But then I'm like, I have to stop sharing my opinion because I don't have the same opinion, right? Like they think this is the most beautiful thing, right? That adds value to somebody. And that's where you can have a house that's listed at, like I had a house that we wrote an offer on. It was listed at $700,000. It ended up selling for $824,000. Wow. So somebody came in there, and to them, this house was worth $124,000 more. They were willing to pay $125,000 more. And my clients were like, we offered, it was on the market at $7,000. We offered $760,000, and they're like, Abel, if somebody bought it for $761,000, I wouldn't have been upset, let alone somebody offered $824,000. The other thing that's really important is when you have a seasoned agent, Core, is that agents learn how to listen to the market. People are kind of haphazard when it comes to listing homes. Well, we'll try it, and then if not, we'll just lower the price. I have a saying. I say, the market speaks, we have to listen. And I have kind of a rule of thumb, and I'll share it with you. I always tell people, if we have the house on the market and we have a ton of showings, and we have no offers, that usually indicates a 1 to 3% being overpriced, 1 to 3%, maybe 1 to 4%. If we're on the market and we have no showings and nobody's looking at it and nobody's writing offers, obviously if nobody's looking at it, nobody's going to be writing offers. We're 5%, 5 to like 7, 8% overpriced, right? And so looking at that stuff, right, like listening to the market and seeing it is a really good indication of like, well, what's going on with the market, right? Hey, we're having a bunch of showings. We just aren't getting any offers. Okay, we're pretty close. We just need to give people an opportunity to write a lower amount, because if sometimes what will happen is if a buyer writes an offer, you have to be really careful, because if you underbid it or if you go too low, it becomes offensive to the seller and they won't even respond to you at all. And so when you're writing these offers, you have to be cognizant of that, and you have to be careful to where it's like, well, it's like that saying, right? Do you want 100% of nothing, or do you want 50% of something, right? Do you want to purchase the house for $30,000 or $20,000 less, or do you not want to be able to buy this house at all? And so a lot of times when we're like looking at the market and what we're doing, and I can see that the market will bear the price that we're offering, and where it's not like ridiculous, or the appraisal will bear it. Obviously, if somebody listed an $800,000 house for $900,000, I'll be like, well, let's offer like $780,000, right? And I'll have a conversation with the agent. But if the house is worth $800,000 and all these homes are selling for $800,000, and they have it listed at $800,000, and it's a matter of time before it sells, I'm not going to recommend for somebody to write an offer at $750,000, right? Because it's just going to get offensive. That's one of the things that agents have to really be cognizant of, is like, as you're listing it, you're listening to the market, what's going on, what showings are we having? Do I have clients that are reaching out to me? Do I have agents that are reaching out to me? What's the interest like when we actually go on the market? I typically, when I list a house, I'm like, every day I'm looking at the pendings around that house. Has anything gone pending? Mm-hmm. Why did that house go pending? If it's something that's completely has nothing to do with my house, then, that's not a problem. But I'm constantly looking at the market and going, okay, hey, this, our house is 2,000 square feet. There's a 1,900 square foot house that just went pending. They're both 2 stories. What's going on with the price? What's the price difference? And why did that actually happen? And sometimes I'll pick up the phone and I'll call the agents and be like, hey, what happened there, right? They'll tell me like, hey, there's like a basement cellar you can, do whatever with, right? Or whatever the case is, right? They spent $200,000 in repairs. That's why it sold. And then I'll ask them the follow-up question. Hey, do you mind sending me the agent's information that toured that house? I'd like to call him and invite him to the ours, because this is pretty similar, So I'll share the wealth.
Oh man. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a seasoned realtor is definitely going to know how to structure it right, the right way. On that same thought though, then, so like, let's say you do your comps, whatever, you have the price point figured out. What goes into the next steps for listing it? I mean, pictures.
Yeah.
You have to put it on the listings, I guess. You have the MLSs or whatever you guys call them.
Yeah. So typically the flow is when we have the listing agreement signed. Before photos, I actually will walk through the house and give my sellers some tidbits. Nothing drives me. I literally saw a picture where the person had taken a picture of the yard and the dog is squatted down in the middle of the yard.
Oh, geez.
Right. And I'm like, this is horrible. For 95, 96% of people that buy a home have seen the house online first. And so for me, like, pictures is one of the most important things, right? It's the first impression there. It's either going to attract them to come see the house or not, right? Drives me nuts when it's like a $900,000, even if it's a $200,000 house, somebody's walking around with their iPhone and taking pictures. I saw one where the guy's taking a picture, and I think it may have been the owner is like standing next to her, like next to the guy, and like taking a bite out of a sandwich. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But there's certain things that I recommend. Like if you're getting your house ready on the market, I would recommend taking family pictures down. It becomes very hard psychologically for somebody to make themselves feel like they're going to be in that house. They could do that because it's like they feel like they're impeding on somebody else's life, right? Take the family portraits down, take the family pictures down, get your toothbrushes off of the, sink and, the vanity in the bathroom, remove the trash can out of the middle of the kitchen when you're taking pictures. And so I'll actually do a walkthrough with them, and I'll tell them. And so there's typically like, I will try to force them into like a little bit of a spring cleaning, regardless of what the season of the year it is, just because aesthetically, when it's pleasing, people will most likely want to come out and see it. And so I do a walkthrough with them. I'll give them some recommendations. I'll even show up with the photographers and if just make sure that everything's tidied up and they don't leave a towel or like boxers or something like that, underwear hanging. So I will guide them through some of that. Typically after that, we do put the house on the market. What kind of is standard is we put the house on the market on Thursdays, because a lot of people start getting ready for open houses on the weekends, going out and touring. So you put the house on the market on Thursday. We do, like an open house on Saturday. But I typically take a little step further. And there are things that I guide my clients through and recommend for them to do that will really smoothen out the transaction when we actually have a buyer. And so a lot of times I'll get all that done. We'll get everything scheduled. We'll get everything dialed in. I'll get the pictures done. And then what's really nice with the MLS is the part of, all the absorbent amount of fees that I pay, regardless of if I have a transaction or not, if I haven't had one for like a month or 3, is it's all connected to all the syndication. So I put it on Zillow, or, it'll kick it over to Zillow and MLS, or like Realtor.com. Some agents try to BS their way and tell them that it's an extra cost for them to do that. It's not. Don't believe them. It's like, we'll put your house on Zillow. Dude, anything on the MLS is going to be on Zillow. Calm down. So we'll do that. And and one of the things that a lot of people don't think through too, which is really important, is if you're selling the house, showings and accommodating showings. People are going to want to come out. They're going to want to tour, setting that up. Who's going to get the notifications? How are you going to get the notifications? Are there any specific like time requests of how long you want somebody, do you want like a 2-hour notice, a 1-hour notice? Sometimes, people have with babies and stuff like that. Hey, like baby's asleep at 12 o'clock. Like, I don't want anybody coming over here, like appointment only. Don't even make an appointment for 12 o'clock. But, navigating that with your agent as well and trying to figure out, okay, like what's a schedule look like? How does it look like? Is there times that, do you work from home? Do you have to step out? I had a seller, I kept telling them to leave the house. They wouldn't leave the house. It just makes it uncomfortable for buyers when they come to the house.
Totally. It's awkward for me if I were to do that. Like walk in on someone.
Well, the worst part about it is this agent called me and she says, hey, have you ever asked your sellers to leave the house when people tour? And I'm like, oh God. I'm like, I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, we were toured and the wife was like in the kitchen making food and stuff. And we're like, okay, kind of odd. And then we walked into the master bedroom and the husband was laying in the bed. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I'm like, as long as he didn't say, come on in, the water's fine. Right? I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, that was really awkward. I wasn't sure if you knew that they're not leaving. And I'm like, I've had this conversation multiple times, but I'll have another conversation with them. And that ended up being one of the clients that I told them I wasn't able to work with them anymore. And I cut the contract and let them out of the contract. It just makes it awkward. And they also, the husband kind of harassed some of the women agents that went through the house. And so I was like, I can't, I'm not interested in that. You can keep the commission. You can go do something else. Like,
Yeah, that's a good reason to get rid of your client at that point.
I'm like, as a seller, I need you to go through the sexual harassment
training.
Yeah. When you finish, send me the certificate, okay?
I want proof.
You're right.
Oh, man. So we talked about the photos, which is really important because that's what the first thing people see. We talked about the syndication, so that's going to get it out to all the websites for people to find it. But you alluded to 2 other things. One was the inspections. I know this is like the cherry on the top, and it's not a requirement, but as a seller, you said you recommended that early. So can you expand on that? What does that mean, and how does that make your home stand out amongst the others?
Yeah. So one of the hesitations of buyers when they're buying a house, right? They're writing an offer, is one of the hesitations on even the amount of money that they offer is they don't know what the condition of your house looks like, right? I've done homes where we had $40,000, $50,000 worth of dry rot in the house, multiple homes like that. And I've had homes that are perfect, right? I mean, I've had brand new homes where literally while we're doing a tour, the air conditioning goes out. And we're like, oh, and the builder's like right there. And we're like, hey, come on in here. Why don't you fix this for us? Thanks a lot. So when I look at this and I look at this transaction, one of the things that I want to do is I want to put as many things out on the table, and I want everybody to have as many conversations as we can and be informed as well as possible, because it just, first and foremost, it just makes the entire transaction smoother. Nobody's upset. Nobody's pissed off. But it also translates into peace of mind, which the seller or the buyer is willing to pay for more for it, and the seller is not having to worry about how much money they're going to get at the end, right? So one of the things before we get into that is there are 3 contingencies, right? Which are 3 areas where a buyer can cancel the contract and get their money back. And 2 of them is where they can lose money. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. The first one is inspections, right? So I had a client where we did the pre-list inspections. There was termites in the house. In order to take care of termites, the house needs to get, covered, and they fumigate it and stuff, right? And there's, quite a bit of dry rot damage that's in there. They actually wanted to fix up a couple of things. They wanted to put new flooring in there and put new kitchen in there. Well, when we did the inspections, pre-list inspections, there was $20,000 of dry rot just underneath the kitchen. And so had they replaced the kitchen, they would have had to rip out that brand new kitchen to get to the mold, to get to the dry rot and stuff like that that's underneath the house, right? And when you're in escrow, that's not the time to be surprised as a seller, right? Buyer, if they don't know, they get it. But what happens is the buyer gets the inspections, we get the inspections, and I'm having a conversation with my buyers, and I'm like, what are we going to ask for, right? Because the buyers are going to want to get the most, and then they're going to maybe test you, and then, maybe they're really serious about the price that they want, but they're going to they have the information and they're formulating a plan while you as a seller have no idea what's going on, right? And then they bring that to you. And then we even talked about repairs. What happens with repairs if somebody doesn't want credits and they want repairs? Well, Corey, if we're in the middle of an inspection and we're in the middle of escrow and I need the roof replaced, as a buyer, I'm going to be like, here's the company that I want to use. I would like for you to pay them to replace this. And that bid could be $17,000, $18,000, right? As a seller, you are running out of time and you don't have really, it's going to be really hard to say, well, hey, can we pump the brakes? Can I get a second opinion? Can I get a second or third, right? Because they're going to be like, well, no, this is what it is. Even with pest inspection, for example, right? You get a pest inspection report that's $30,000 or $20,000. You don't have the privilege now because you're in escrow to say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let me go find, my friend's a contractor. He can come out and fix this stuff for like $5,000. I could save a little bit of money. No, because you're at the buyer's mercy now, right? And they're trying to get you to do as much work as you can. And then you got the appraisal and stuff, right? And we talked about, you give credits and then all of a sudden you have this. So what I am a firm believer in, and I recommend this to all my sellers, is pre-list inspections. That's not the norm here. That is the norm in San Diego or the Bay Area, just because people don't have time to be coming in here. There's like 30, 40 offers and you don't have time to be sitting here and going out and doing inspections. And so I kind of borrowed the idea from them. But what I'll do is I'll do a home inspection, pest inspection, and a roof inspection. First of all, that actually means for a seller, that means a lot more money. Because again, you don't have a buyer that's like, there's no reservations on, well, I'm going to offer $500,000 on this $500,000 house because I don't know what needs to be fixed. And then I don't know how many credits I'm going to be able to get from them. I don't know what that looks like. So first of all, that actually gives you the ability to get more money, and you have the peace of mind that they're not going to come back and ask you for money back, right? So if you get an offer at $700,000, you know that, hey, they're buying this as basically like for $700,000. They're not going to ask for anything. And the seller or the buyer has peace of mind. The other thing too to keep in mind is that the inspection contingency, typically 12, 13, 14 days, as a seller, you don't want to be on pins and needles wondering if this buyer is going to find enough things on the house to come back and ask you for however much, and or they're going to come back and cancel, right? If you're in escrow for 2 weeks and you get a cancellation, that's not going to look good for you to put the house back on the market, right? And or again, right, your hands are tied and you're having to pay them $20,000, $30,000. If you get the inspections done before you list, you can call your buddy up and say, hey, come back out here, like fix all this stuff, right? You can have the pest company come out. He could fix it for $5,000 instead of $30,000. The pest company comes out and re-inspects it and gives you a clear check, and you put that on the MLS, right? Hey, there was things that were found. We fixed it. Now here's the clearance, right? So it'll save you a lot of money as well. But the other part too that's really nice is when you're actually putting the house on the market, and you have the inspections, they're going to get more money. You can fix things, but it also actually helps reduce the inspection contingency period, right? So instead of a buyer going in not knowing, and taking 2 weeks to figure out if they want this house or not, right? Because technically, I mean, with that inspection, the buyer can have bad pizza, go to sleep at night. Aunt Sally comes in the dream and says, don't buy this house, you're going to ruin your life. And he wakes up and he says, based on the inspection contingencies, I'm canceling this house, right? You can't do that with any of the other inspections, right? Like this is the one exception where Aunt Sally can come to you in your dream and butcher everything. The other thing too is, sometimes if there's a lack of commitment from the buyer side, sometimes I've had buyers ask me to keep looking at homes while we're in escrow. And I'm like, well, that's not fair. Like we're in good faith. The contract is written in good faith. We're going to want to buy this house. So like, I don't want to take you guys in. If that's the case, let's cancel and we can keep looking and stuff. Right. But what happens is that it actually allows us to reduce the contingency period. So instead of a buyer having 2-3 weeks to decide, right? And also at the same token, you have to look at the both aspects of it, right? The buyer is stressed out of his mind, and he's wondering if he has enough time to get all the inspections done so that he knows whether he's going to move forward with this purchase or not. And the seller is freaking out because he doesn't know if they're going to find things that are going to cancel the deal. We know everything that's going on. Peace of mind. We have a shorter contingency period. Sometimes I have buyers that won't even do their inspections when we provide them inspections. Or if they do, I let them know, hey, we'll only negotiate on things that our inspector didn't find. So if you find like 5 things that weren't on the original inspection, we'll do that and we'll figure it out, right? So pre-list inspections are huge. It's a huge benefit. The other thing too with that is, and we kind of alluded to it earlier, is the proof of funds. If we have proof of funds, I will, as a listing agent, even if we have one offer, I will try to address the appraisal before we even get to it. So I gave you the inspections. You have all the inspections that you need. If there's any doubt in regards to the appraisal, and or if there's any credits, we'll have a conversation and we'll say, hey, what does it look like? Do you have enough money to be able to cover the appraisal, right? If yes, then would you be willing, all you got to do is ask, right? Hey, would you be willing to cover the appraisal or remove the appraisal contingency? If you do, we'll take it off the market today and we'll put it into escrow with you guys. If you're not, okay, we still might, go into escrow with you. It'll play a little hard to get. Well, we might still get into escrow with you, but it definitely doesn't tighten up the terms and the conditions enough for the seller to where they're like thrilled about it, right? Yeah, we get an as is offer, which means you still can cancel it because it's on a take it or leave it basis, but at least it's shorter contingency. We're not having to do any of that. But you also have that conversation with them about the appraisal, and that can help you a lot. But that just the pre-list inspections by themselves, Corey, I can't tell you how much money it has saved my sellers. I can't tell you how much heartache and headache it has saved people. I've literally had the one negative review I've ever gotten wasn't even the client that I was representing. It was the client on the other side. And she felt like I took advantage of them. And all I was doing was asking for things, and she didn't have a competent enough agent to say no. And then what kind of sucked is she was upset. And so my client was sensitive to the lavender, the diffuser, because we had asked her to not diffuse it for a little bit. So she got upset to the point where she dumped a bunch of the oil all over. We had to have the fan on and stuff like that. But that was all because hey, you didn't really know the condition of the house. You put it on the market, somebody came in, somebody did inspections. Now we're like, hey, we're making a list of things. And on that house, actually, in fact, what had happened was they had put a whole house fan in there and they had cut the trusses, which you can't be cutting the trusses.
No.
Right. You can't be cutting trusses to put that in there. So we had to have an engineer go out and tell us how to reattach the trusses to
reinforce the roof. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, had you done the inspections, you would have known that would have gotten fixed. And you wouldn't have gotten upset at us for asking for the house to be in sound condition and not fall apart on my client. Right? Blame me for it. Fine.
No, I think that's actually really great. I mean, it gives the buyers a peace of mind, and the seller, if they're getting their pre-list inspections, if there are things that are wrong, they're going to come up in the report no matter what. Who does the inspection? You can go find and shop around for the cheapest price to get that repair done. Right. Otherwise, when you're last minute, you can't shop around. You got to get things fixed if you want to save this or salvage the deal. And you're going to be paying top dollar to get the repairs done. So it's better instead of giving the seller credits, just do the due diligence up front, get it taken care of, because then you're still going to lose that money. You're going to probably lose more when they counter offer you with a lower price.
Right.
at the end of the day, because they're like, well, your house is not in living condition, so
Right.
give us all this money.
Right.
Get it fixed for a fraction of the price, so it will make your house more desirable for both buyers and give you more price that it might probably will sell at.
Yep.
So then that's the photos, that's the pre-list inspections. Let's say, if you're living there, obviously leave the house, take the pictures down, toothbrushes, all the things that make it homey. What about if you don't need to leave in the house, staging the house? Is that worth it, or does that not matter?
Almost every single time I show a house that has the chandelier that hangs down to about this high, Corey, I kid you not, somebody walks up to it and stands in front of it and goes, why is this so low? And I'm like, because the dining room table goes here. Like, what do you think? Like, they were growing, I don't know, they were growing plants and they wanted, like the dining, it's very obvious. It's hanging right here. That it goes in the dining room. I found that a lot of people are very, they can't really flow and they can't really create. And one of the things that I see all the time is when we go into an empty space, people's wheels are spinning and they can't figure out how to fit furniture. They can't do things, right? Once in a while, I'll get somebody that's like, we'll just do the couch over here. We'll put this here. We'll put the TV there, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. That's great. That's not 99% of the people that go into the house, right? 99% of the people that go in are just absolutely confused. They have no idea how the couch is going to go. There's sometimes like these awkward spaces. They don't know what to do with it. I have a listing that's actually coming on the market in Loomis, and we're going to be listing it in about a week or two. And it's a massive house, just completely got renovated. It's like 7 acres, 3,700 square feet. The upstairs is just all master bedroom core. It's a beautiful house. We're going to get it staged. And we're going to get it staged because there is this like family / living room area that has like a fireplace that's there. And I'm like, I know. And then there's a part where there's like a little step in for the dining room table. I know that people are going to stand there and they're going to be like, what is this room for? And I'm going to have to explain or I'm going to put sticky notes, right? That says, this is the dining room. This is where you eat dinner. This is where you eat food, right? Or like hang plates from the ceiling or something, right? So when it comes to spaces, especially bigger homes, if people are moving out, get the pictures done before they move their furniture. At least there's pictures of the house with the furniture in there, and it makes it a little bit easier for people to visualize, at least through pictures, that like, oh, I looked online and this is where the kitchen is and stuff like that. If they've already moved out, I'd recommend staging it. I mean, it's usually a couple grand to get the staging in there, and it's a couple $100 a month to keep it in there. Even if you stage it for like the first month, we take pictures and we do that, and then they can empty it. Based on 10 years of doing this, and people scratching their heads, looking at the little spot in the kitchen where the refrigerator goes, and they go, "What's supposed to be in here?" I recommend getting it staged. It's going to be well worth the money.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It will take the paralysis analysis away that we kind of alluded to earlier.
Right.
So let's say as a seller now that I've got the pictures, I've got the staging, I've got the pre-list inspections and everything, and I'm starting to get offers, and I have 2 offers that look very similar to me. Like, what am I looking for to know which offer to accept?
Yeah.
Like, what are the areas? And we kind of alluded to a lot of it, but to summarize, what are those things that will help me pick one versus the other?
There's a section that's in there where it kind of starts off at the top of the page on the purchase agreement where it gives you the dollar amount, right? You kind of start there and you start working your way down, because the first part is going to be the financial part, right? How much money they're doing, how much money they're putting down, how long the escrow is going to be, right? All that stuff. The second section is going to be where all of the terms and the conditions are going to be, right? How long are they asking for the contingency to be, right? The appraisal contingency, the inspection contingency, the loan contingency, right? So you look at that. Then kind of below that, you start getting into the nuances of what they're looking for. One of the things that I recommend is that, for the love of God, agents need to go through and they need to explain to their clients what the buyers are asking for. They might be asking for a refrigerator that the seller is not willing to part with. If you don't go over that with them, I mean, technically it's in the contract, and if a seller signs that, you're giving them the refrigerator, right? Like, you don't want them to sue you for that. But you want to go through like kind of with a fine tooth comb. But the first 2 pages where with the price and the conditions are going to be kind of the 2 main parts where you're going to know, right? Are they doing a cash offer? Some of the things to look at that's really important, as well as what kind of a loan is being used. Cash is key, right? Sometimes cash is king, but that might come with a price reduction. But at the same token, with a cash offer, you don't have an appraisal contingency and you don't have a loan contingency. So that actually does away with those two contingencies. And a lot of times people like that because they're like, I don't have to worry about the loan, them getting approved, them not getting approved. Second, you have conventional loans, right? Conventional loans are great. They're pretty easy. They're pretty light on the inspections and stuff like that. Third, you're going to have FHA. They're a little bit tighter. They're going to want, for example, with FHA, they're going to want Section 1 items, which are like active dry rot and stuff like that, on the house fixed. VA loans, I love my veterans. I love them to death. Like, the VA needs to figure out what they're doing because it is one of the toughest loans. I've literally had a VA appraiser go out like 5 times to the point where the buyer, I was representing the seller, the buyer was like, for God's sakes, just leave it alone. Let me go. And it was like, they painted the eaves, and some of the paint chips, when they sanded it down, were on the ground. He went out and was like, he did his inspection, and then he went out and he's like, oh, there's paint chips. You guys have to remove that, and then I'll go back out. And it's costing the buyer like $500 every time he goes back out, right? We remove that, and then he looks at the paint and he's like, well, it's not smooth, the paint, and I can still see some of the grooves from the previous paint. And so I need you guys to sand all of this down. This guy was like fixated on this damn eave, where everybody was like, stop, man, it's costing $500 every time you're going out. We're like $1,500, $2,000 into this. Just let it go. Let's just move on. And so if an agent doesn't know that and doesn't explain that to a buyer or to the seller, everything else can look the same. The type of lending can make a difference. The type of loan that they have, right? The type of down payment. The other thing that I would always recommend is lean on your agent. Ask your agent to have conversations with the agents and stuff, right? And give you some feedback on what they feel like is going on, right? How are they interacting with them, right? Are they kind of headstrong, right? Are they kind of like weirdos, right? Are they kind of giving off like type A personalities, which drive me crazy because I'm like, just relax. We're all working together. We're doing this for each other. We're not here to prove anything to each other. We're just trying to help a buyer and seller get into a house, right? But that's really important. And then the other things that you want to look at is the offer contingent on them selling another house?
Oh, yeah.
Because
that could be pretty big.
Yeah. Because if that's contingent on them selling another house, where's it at? In this hot pocket of a market, is it in the hot area or is it in the cold area, right? Is it going to sell fast? Do your sellers need rent back? Legally, banks will only allow the sellers to stay in the house for 2 months after the house closes. So you can go 30 days or 60 days after close of escrow. If that's something that's important to the sellers, you have to put that in there. You can't go in and try to negotiate afterwards and ask the buyers like, hey, by the way, we're in escrow. Can you guys give us 2 months after we close to stay in the house? That's going to be really hard to do. So you want to have these conversations up front. And sometimes sellers are contingent on their home. So they're contingent on finding a replacement property before they can sell this, right? So we're doing contingent. And if you have to sell this, if the seller has to sell this house to buy this house, and then you get a buyer that has to sell their house to buy this house, you're creating a little caboose, right?
Yeah.
Like train caboose of like all these people, like this needs to sell and then that's going to sell this. And I've done it. I've done tons of those where it's like just, sometimes you have what you have. We do contingent. I help people with contingent buying and selling all the time. In fact, I had one client, it was kind of interesting. The dad was like elderly and he was freaking out and he kept saying, I don't want to end up in a tent. I don't want to end up in a tent. I was like, sir, I promise you're not going to end up in a tent. I will help you buy and sell without any hiccups. So when we actually sold their house and closed on theirs, I bought him a tent as a closing gift. I was like, here's the tent that you will never use. And he's like, I like you. I like this guy. And I'm like, you're welcome.
You can go use it for your backyard.
Yeah. Use it for backyard.
Camping.
Yeah. So there's a lot but a lot of these things like contingencies, like on the sales side, like if you need to, these are things that you need to disclose up front. If you have a chandelier that is grandma's chandelier, best advice I can tell you is take the chandelier off before we take pictures. I don't want to be responsible for it. We don't want to have to get into things. Take it out. If it's not in the pictures, it can't convey.
That's right. Yeah. No one could ask for what they didn't see.
That's right. That's right. It's never been here. I don't know what you're talking about. They'll be like, it's in the pictures and it was attached and it has to convey. And, well, we made the notes. Well, they didn't see the notes or whatever, right? Or it got deleted or the agent forgot to put it in there.
And there's so much that goes into the contracts. Really, is all these little nuances from when you're looking at offers and all the legwork that you got to do to sell the house. So going back to that misconception, like, yeah, really, realtors could do quite a bit.
Yeah.
So they're worth the amount that you're kind of paying them, as long as they're good and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So then you as a realtor broker, how do you deal with how do you deal with burnout? Because there's like so much. I mean, you're up till 10 o'clock sometimes dealing with these. So what do you do to unwind?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So actually, just recently I bought some fly fishing gear, so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to get out and do some fly fishing, and I've been married for almost 22 years. Got 3 wonderful kiddos that are much older, and so getting to spend time with them and doing things with them, and Corey, I think thus is society, that we think that we get more honor and respect from people the busier that we are. But I don't think we understand the power of being able to say no to people and knowing and realizing that they will understand, I used to be deadly afraid. Like for a period of time, I actually had investors from like out of the country that would call me and I'd stay up until like 2:00 in the morning to talk to them, and I got to a point where I was like, cause it's commission. You don't sell anything, you don't get anything, right? Everybody looks at, I made a $40,000 commission, right? And they're like, oh my God, that's so great. I wish it was every month. It's not. I've had times where for 6 months, I can't sell anything. I can't get anybody to buy. I can't get anybody to sell. I have no clients, right? There's almost like this panic that ensues, right? Where you're like, I have to have my phone on me all the time. I have to have it on, not even silent. I have to have it on full blast because I don't want to lose anybody's phone calls and stuff, right? And when I decided that my downtime was actually super vital and important for me to actually be able to not just take care of my family and not take care of myself, but also for my clients, it drove me to a point where I had to start actually having important conversations with my clients and saying, hey, I know we've been talking until 9, 10 o'clock at night. I have to pump the brakes. I can't do that. I really need to spend some time with my family and stuff like that, right? So let's have a conversation up until 7 o'clock, and then from there, or like the best way to do that is to finish off the clients that you have, and then the new ones you set the new standards, right? Like, hey, after 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I won't answer my phone call. And one of the things that I realized is that I didn't do that for the longest time because I felt like I was going to lose clients, but when you can have a conversation with somebody and you tell them that your family is important and your health is important or whatever, right? Hey, like I need some downtime. I'm going to take some downtime. People end up actually honoring and respecting you way more, right? And they're willing to work with you more because they realize that you're a person of priority and you have things that are more important than just making money, right?
It sounds like then, it's just setting those boundaries, spending time with family, doing some activities with them, and just not letting this just consume you so you could deal with all the customers, the clients, all that good stuff within the window that you allocate for it. That's how you kind of create that work-life balance.
Yeah.
So for someone watching, and I know there's so many different areas that we could have got into, like investing, ADUs, and all that. And you know what? We're going to bring you back on another episode on the investment side of real estate, because that's just a whole nother animal that we're gonna have to dive into at a later time. But for the buyers and sellers and what we've covered so far, is there any question someone watching right now was like, oh, I wish you would ask this one question? Is there something that I glossed over that we could have driven home a little bit more?
I think the biggest thing that I would tell people is if you don't hear anything else, right, is this whole notion of the fear aspect of that goes into buying a home, right? And a lot of people are afraid of what they don't know. And a lot of people won't take the step of purchasing something because they're afraid of the process and owning a home and doing all that. If you calculate even rent, right? If you take a couple $1,000s a month of rent that you're paying, I mean, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of like 5-10 years, right? That you'd be paying somebody else's mortgage. And no matter how great of a tenant you are, I mean, I had a home inspector that retired a couple years ago, and he had a house. He had a tenant that was there for 28 years. She damn near paid that house off. When she leaves, he's not going to cut her a check. He's not going to say, hey, here's $5,000, here's $1,000. He's going to say, hey, thanks for paying rent, and basically paying the house off. Thanks, appreciate it. And there's nothing left. And really, one of the things that I've seen over and over, Corey, is that when people make the decision, again, buy a house when you can afford it, not when you're waiting for the market to crash, when you want to buy the $1 million house for $300,000, right? And maybe we could talk about even in the future, the investment part where you can add homes to your portfolio without having to do 20% down. But what I would encourage people is if you've been thinking about it, you don't need a lot of money down. There's down payment assistance programs. There's ways for us to get credits and stuff like that from sellers. You really don't need a whole lot of money. And if you just bite off what you can chew, if you could afford a $300,000 house, buy a $300,000 house, right? Because what happens is, if you're renting from me, that's like me having a credit card where I'm going to spend every single month, but you're held responsible for paying it off. And that's really what renting is like. You don't create generational wealth by renting from people and waiting to buy a $3 million house or $2 million house, right? Buy something, get your family out of out of the weather, right? You don't have somebody that's going to come tell you what to do. They're not going to evict you. They're not going to tell you to leave, right? If you're afraid of losing income, well, if I buy a house, what if I can't make the payments? Well, if you're renting somewhere, last time I checked, you have to make a payment to live in that house, right? So regardless of whether you're renting or not, the only difference is you're paying off somebody else's mortgage, and they're going to benefit from the equity from it. And whether somebody uses me, whether they use their cousin or whoever they use, huge recommendation: buy something, get out of the renting market. The housing market does this, but it does continue to go up. And who would have known that houses 20, 30 years ago that were selling for $100,000 or $200,000 would be selling for $1 million. And you will never have the equity until you actually buy something yourself. And the great thing about it is it's a loan. So even if the housing market goes up and down, course of 30 years, you pay that off. It's a completely paid off house and you have something to leave to your kids. And so I think it's really important, the fear factor that keeps people out of it. It's not really a question, I guess, but that would be just my biggest source of encouragement is get over the fear factor, buy something that you can afford, live in it, and when you can afford more, you could buy your next house and turn that into a rental.
Yeah, and I guess the question there is, if someone was considering buying versus renting, it's always better to buy and own the home than rent a home, because to your point, you're paying someone else's mortgage. Just pay your own. Pay yourself that. Pay yourself that money. Yeah. At the end of the day, why not? So
pay it towards.
And I think, and I definitely, if people are scared, there's so much that I didn't know that could be done with like how you structure the loan, the seller's credits, how to put in offers, and like make even with the inspections, there's like so much that can go into it that could really bring the price point down somewhere that makes it affordable. You know what I mean? So there's could be like these, if the realtor's experienced and they know what houses to look for that could come in at a lower price, or older homes that there's going to be findings and you can live with that potentially, or all these things, right? There's so many different ways. But at the end of the day, you're paying yourself back. Yeah. You might have repairs that you could put off, stagger out throughout the years and make it work for a period of time. So you got to consider all that. But if you're just paying rent, someone else is benefiting. One, they're going to do the write-offs and all this other stuff. Two, they're going to get the equity of the house as it appreciates over time. Right. And then three, as a renter, you got nothing to show for it.
No,
there's nothing in it for you. So if people can transition out of renting as quickly as possible, because there's a time for it for sure, but if you could transition out of that and own a home, that's definitely the recommendation. Yeah. So it's always better to buy within your means,
right,
if you can, and if there is the house on the market.
Yeah.
So I have a segment where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Okay.
And the question left for you is, do you love what you do?
Yes. It drives me crazy, but it keeps me on my toes. Honestly, I one of the things, I may not be the smartest tool in the shed. I'd be the first one to admit that. But Corey, I think one of the things that God has definitely gifted me with is problem solving skills. And I find myself in a lot of situations where everybody else is kind of baffled, and I'm like, oh, there's a solution to that, and maybe that's a lack of some of my it's like you lack in one area and you make up for the other. I do enjoy it. I love helping people buy homes. I love watching people make their dreams come true. I love seeing people, right, like they didn't think, or they're first time home buyers, or they could be 10th time home buyers, right? Handing my clients their keys is worth all the stress and all the crap that I go through, and the sleepless nights and the tossing and turning and arguments and yelling at other agents and doing all that stuff. It is absolutely worth it. And it's really kind of like, going to war for somebody and allowing somebody to reap it. I mean, obviously I get a financial benefit from that, but there's nothing better for me than watching families like smile, get out from renting. And when I go to visit, and, especially for as long as I've been doing this, one of my favorites is helping somebody buy a house when it was just a husband and wife and newlyweds. And now they're having to sell that house and buy a bigger house because they have 2-3 kids, right, over the process. And so I absolutely adore what I do. I love the people that I meet. I love creating friendships and relationships, and the random phone calls that I get, like, hey, haven't talked to you in a while, right? Or like, well, I'll reach out to a client and they're like, hey, I was just thinking about you. And I'm like, oh, my ears are burning, right? I knew you were talking about me, like my ears were burning. I do. I absolutely love what I do.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Now, the question for you is, what question do you have for the next guest? Wow. This is actually the perfect question for my next guest. This is the perfect question for my next guest.
Awesome.
Oh, man. Abel, where can people find you one more time if they want to get it connected and follow you and see what you have on the market?
Yeah. First of all, before I even answer that, thanks for the opportunity to come sit with you, man. I love you and adore you, and I love your family, and it's just been an absolute pleasure to be able to come sit with you and talk a little bit about what I do. So Abel Simonyan, like Cain and Abel. I always tell people, I'm like, everybody always asks me, where's Cain? And I'm like, you fooled me once. He tried to kill me once. I got rid of him. But Abel Simonyan, first part's like Simon and then Y-A-N, and emails abel@realtorabel.com. I guess you'll put the phone number and stuff like that, or just Google search Abel Simonyan broker, and I come up. It's the handsome guy. There's a couple of weird looking guys that come up under my name, but it's the handsome one. Just click on that one, and it'll take you to the right link.
That's great, Abel. Thank you so much for coming out today, and thank you for sitting down and giving us all the inside trading knowledge about real estate and how to do the buying, the selling, and everything in between. So totally a pleasure. I know I learned a lot on just having this conversation with you. So for everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.